His jaw tensed. "I found out what happened to her." She closed her eyes, and immediately they filled with tears. He was about to tell her what she'd sensed for years. "It wasn't an accident." "No." She hadn't cried since the night she'd left Sooner with Grady at the carnival. Over the years, she'd kept tears and sadness buried so very deep. But now she couldn't stop the tears. Rokov pulled her into his embrace and held her close. He didn't say anything, but just held her as the sadness and worry and old fears poured out of her. Finally, she pulled back and swiped the tears. "I'm sorry." "It's okay." His tone was soft and firm. "I guess I've known it all these years, but to hear it is another matter." "I'm sorry." She shook her head. "You shouldn't be sorry. You gave me the answer I've needed for too many years." She pulled back away from the heat and the touch of his fingers on her arms. "How?" He hesitated. "She was drowned." "Like the other two women?" "Yes, and she was marked with the word witch." "Oh, God." He enunciated each word carefully. "Could Grady have killed Mariah in a jealous rage?" She felt sick. "He's a liar, you know that." She shook her head. "I can't believe he'd kill her." Rokov was silent for a moment, and then, in a low, dangerous voice, said, "Did he ever try anything with you? You two were the same age. Did he ever touch you?" She paled. "Charlotte." "I was too argumentative. Grady used to say if I could just be more like Mariah, his life would be easier." His gaze burned into her. "Is that a yes or a no?" "A no. Grady never touched me." A grim smile tipped the edge of his mouth. Okay. The question satisfied, his mind seemed to return to the matter at hand. "You said you both worked at the Madame Divine tent." "That's right, we took shifts." "You wore the same costume?" "And the same wig and mask. Grady didn't want folks knowing Madame Divine's identity. He never wanted the mystique ruined. Or he never wanted the public knowing his psychic was two underage girls." "That too, I suppose." "If Grady didn't kill Mariah," he said carefully, "could the killer have come into the Madame Divine tent as a customer and become fixated on her?" "Sure, maybe. We saw so many people, I lost track." "The killer could just as easily have gotten a reading from you as Mariah?" Her stomach dropped. "You're saying whoever killed her was really after me?" "Maybe. Maybe he just wanted Madame Divine. If the public didn't know she was two people, then he wouldn't either." "Oh, God." "What?" "We switched at the last second that night. I wasn't feeling well, and Mariah was happy to get out of the trailer and away from the baby." He frowned. "Did anyone odd come into your tent before Mariah died that set off alarm bells for you?" "It has been 18 years. I've blocked all that out. And after Mariah died, I was gone for good in less than a week." "When was the last time you worked in the tent?" "About a week before she died. After she was gone, I refused to go into the tent again." "Grady give you a hard time about not working?" "Yes, he was furious. He said—" She paused and swallowed jagged emotions. "He said it should have been me." Rokov opened the manila folder at his side. "These are Mariah's crime scene photos, and they are rough." She moistened dry lips and tried to dismiss the growing nausea in her gut. "Let me see." He hesitated a moment and then opened the file. She stared in horror at the colored picture of Mariah lying on her back, her face covered with a handkerchief and her limp body lying by a road. Tears choked her throat. "I don't see a connection." "Have a closer look." She clenched her fists. She lowered her gaze and drew in a sharp breath when she fully took in the image of her sister lying in the grass. She'd seen her share of autopsy photos, and though she'd found them sobering, they'd never been as devastating as these. "You all right?" "Yes." He flipped to the next picture. It was another angle of her lying down. "He wrote on her." "Yes." All she saw was the violence and the hatred that had spewed out of a monster onto her sister. But as she'd allowed logic to elbow and subdue emotion, her mind locked on a detail. "That handkerchief is Grady's. He always carried one like that." "It appears fairly generic." "He bought them by the dozen because he always needed one in his pocket. He called them his good luck charm." Her knees gave way. and he quickly closed the file and caught her elbow, preventing her from crumbling. He guided her to a cream-colored sofa. I still hear her screams in my dreams. Her last moments must have been a nightmare. He sat beside her. Though he didn't touch her, his presence gave her the strength to stay calm. She wasn't going to cry this time. It's no shame to cry, he said. My mother taught me never to cry. A foolish lesson for a mother to pass on to a child, but until today I've not cried in a very long time. I'm sorry I was the cause. It wasn't you. You gave me the answers I needed for so long. She tossed him a sidelong glance and found him staring at her. Where is she? Grady said he had her buried in Fairfax, but he wouldn't let me see the grave. She was never claimed, so she was cremated. She pressed her fingertips to her eyes. She should have been claimed. We should have gathered and honored her. Let's go, he said. Where? Get away from here. Get something to eat. I'm not hungry. You need a break. You need an hour to get away from this place and the white trial and the worries you're carrying about sooner. I don't need a break. Get your purse or whatever it is you carry. Break. Detective. He shook his head. I think we moved beyond the formal titles a long time ago. My name is Daniel. She shook her head. Detective, I told you we were not going to move beyond the formal titles. As I remember, we did. 5 times. Color rose in her cheeks. That was different. Really? How? It was a diversion for both of us. We both knew it was what it was. Meaning? Not personal. When a man and a woman get naked, it's personal. He rose and pulled her with him. Now get your purse. We're getting out of here. Chapter 19. Thursday, October 28th, 8:55 p.m. Too tired and overwhelmed to argue with Rockoff, Charlotte grabbed her purse from her desk drawer and shut off the lights. Rockoff waited on the front porch beside her as she set the alarm and locked the deadbolt. He guided her down the stairs to an unmarked police cruiser, opened the passenger side door for her, and waited as she slid into the car. He closed her door. The car's interior had remained warm and immediately subdued the chill clinging to her bones. Without a word, Rockoff got behind the wheel and fired up the engine. A quick glance in the rearview mirror, and he was driving down the street. Before long, they'd maneuvered around the latest patch of road construction, so much a part of this area, and were on I-495 South. She didn't ask where they were going, knowing she was safe, and for these few moments with him, she did not have to worry. When he pulled into a residential neighborhood, she sat a little straighter. The houses were small, many built in the 50s, but the lawns and properties were neatly kept. Where are we? I have to stop by my parents. They're having dinner, so we might as well grab a bite there. Immediately, she tensed. I shouldn't be here. Why not? Their food is good, better than any restaurant, and you're hungry. No, they're not expecting me. She stared down the street, wondering if they'd passed a metro stop, a bus, or a subway line. He ignored her. Mom cooks enough for an army. Besides, it's late, and some of the clan will have cleared out. I don't like being around real families. They were reminders of too many personal disasters. I can wait in the car. No. He parked behind a black Lincoln and came immediately around to her side of the car. He opened the door. Don't be a baby, Wellington. It's just a meal. Breaking bread with family is personal. More personal than sex? Absolutely. She got out, hugging her purse close. Rockoff followed and pressed his hand into the small of Charlotte's back, guiding her toward his mother's front door, decorated with dried cornstalks. He could have called his mother and begged off the meal. God knows he'd done it enough times. But he'd wanted Charlotte to meet his family. Why? And to fully answer that question required more time than he had. All he knew was that they were both hungry, and there was no better place to nourish her than here. Without knocking, he opened the front door. Immediately, the sounds of laughter and music rushed out to greet them. Charlotte's muscles stiffened under his palm, and he could feel her pushing back. If he'd not been there, she'd have run. You can cross-examine a man to shreds without breaking a sweat, and yet a little family time scares you? It scares the shit out of me, she whispered. The uncharacteristic remark made him laugh, which was how his mother found them, him smiling down at her and her looking at him with a bemused, if not embarrassed, expression. An outsider might have thought he'd just kissed her, or they'd shared an intimate exchange.
"Daniel?"
His mother's voice was loud and excited.
"We did not think you'd make it."
He nudged Charlotte closer to his mother with more than just a little push in the small of her back. "I don't have much time. I've got to get back to work soon." His mother's bright blue gaze had shifted completely from him to Charlotte, and there was a curiosity there that could only be described as hungry.
"And who is your friend?"
His mother had learned English well over 30 years ago, but she still spoke with a pronounced Russian accent. Streaks of white had turned her blue-black hair to salt and pepper, but erect shoulders gave her the presence of a much taller woman. A strict code of eating had kept her figure trim, and she still wore dark dresses instead of slacks or shorts.
"This is Charlotte Wellington. We're working on a case together."
His mother arched a brow.
"You are a policeman?"
Charlotte extended her hand. "I am an attorney, Mrs. Rockoff." His mother took her hand in both of hers.
"My name is Nadia Rockoff, Daniel's mother, and please call me Nadia."
More laughter and conversation bubbled from the kitchen.
"I don't mean to intrude." "Intrude? That is the last thought to cross my mind. My son knows I feed all hungry people. Now come and please sit at my table."
His mother led the way, and Charlotte tossed him a glance filled with a mixture of worry, relief, and payback is a bitch. He winked at her. They moved into the kitchen, decorated with formica and white wallpaper with strawberries and vines. The stainless round kitchen table now sported 2 extra middle extensions to accommodate the mountains of food and the crowd, which included his parents, 2 brothers, a sister, and a grandmother. All the Rockoff children looked eerily similar. Growing up, they'd been known as the Rockoff Rat Pack, infamous for close ties and a readiness to fight anyone who challenged the pack. When Daniel and Charlotte entered the kitchen, all conversation stopped. Rockoff stood at her side, his hand on her back.
"Family, I'd like you to meet Charlotte Wellington. We work together."
The group stared in stunned silence, and for a moment he wasn't sure if they'd heard him. However, his father broke the shocked stillness.
"Welcome, Miss Wellington. I'm Dmitri Rockoff."
"Charlotte, please."
He nodded. "And you will call me Dmitri. These are my children, Nathan, Ivan, and Joanna. There is another daughter, Alexa, but she is traveling for her business."
They all raised their hands and nodded. Dumb grins ignited and spread across each face. He'd be catching shit about this later. So be it. At the other end of the table sat his grandmother.
"Charlotte, this is my grandmother, Mrs. Rockoff."
She smiled at Charlotte.
"Daniel, get this poor girl a chair. She is hungry."
"Sure, Nana, sure." He pulled 2 extra chairs from the dining room and set them at the table. His sister scooted to the right to make room for them.
"I have a lovely dining room," his mother said, "and of course no one ever eats in there. Everybody wants the kitchen."
"Family gatherings are often impromptu here," Daniel explained. "One kid figures out what Mom has on the stove, and he texts the others. Before you know it, there's a crowd." Charlotte sat on the edge of her chair, as if she could jump and run with little prompting. "That's nice. You're lucky to be so close."
"Do you have family in this area?" Mr. Rockoff said.
"No," she said smoothly. "They're out of town." Charlotte had never talked about family until tonight, when he'd informed her Mariah had been murdered. There was Grady, niece Sooner, and an unnamed aunt who'd taken her into her home. They were a ragtag group with loose ties at best. Rockoff took 2 plates from his mother and gave one to Charlotte. "Dig in." Charlotte accepted the plate and glanced at the table with a bit of panic. "Oh my, I don't know where to start." "It's all guaranteed to bust any diet." The comment came from a tall, slender brunette with ice blue eyes. The dad had introduced her as Joanna. "Mom likes to cook with gallons of butter." Mrs. Rockoff shrugged.
"A little butter is good for the soul. Much better than all that junk in the stores today."
Charlotte had no idea what dish to choose or where to start. She'd not felt this awkward since she'd argued her first case in law school. Without much thought, she grabbed the first serving spoon and heaped what looked like a cabbage dish onto her plate. Next was a meat dish, something marinated and spicy, and then potatoes. It smelled tantalizing, and she realized she was hungry. She'd been so nervous when she'd visited Sooner that she'd barely eaten. Grateful to have a plate and something to do, she ate and listened as the family chattered around her. Rockoff's brothers razzed him about cleaning his stuff out of the backyard shed, discussed who would rake Nona's leaves, and Alexa's latest text from Boston. He took it all in stride, letting all the good-natured razzing roll off his back. When Charlotte had first suggested they sleep together, she'd not really thought of Daniel Rockoff as a person. She'd sensed he was honorable and good, but that had been secondary to her primary goal, ending a very long and lonely dry spell. And he'd done it. In fact, he'd done such a good job, she'd been unable to forget him. She'd called him the second time, half hoping it wouldn't be as good as the first time. Better to be disappointed early and move on. But the second time had been as good as, if not better than, the first. Before she realized it, she couldn't stop anticipating the next time. She'd convinced herself it was just sex, a basic need, not so different than food or water. But she'd been fooling herself. It was more than sex. And Daniel Rockoff was so much more than a man in a motel room. He was a man who could be gentle with horrific news, who was loved by his family, and who was respected by his co-workers. She'd not only learned a lot about Daniel Rockoff these last few days, but had broken all the rules she'd established for their relationship. What emotional price would she eventually have to pay for allowing too much familiarity? Better to pull back. Just sit, eat, and make a quiet retreat from the conversation. The Rockoffs had a different plan. "You were representing that woman who murdered her husband, weren't you?" The question came from Joanna. "That's right," Charlotte said. "I read about you in the paper." "You did?" She smiled but didn't expand. "Have you spoken to Ms. White since the trial? She must be pretty relieved." "She's putting her life back together," Charlotte said. "Many of the editorial pieces suggest she killed her husband," Joanna challenged. "That is their opinion," Charlotte said, grateful for something businesslike to discuss. "The jury found Ms. White innocent." Joanna shared her brother's intense gaze. The evidence could have gone either way. The jury did not agree. Juries can be swayed by emotion. Rockoff set his fork down and glanced at his sister. "Be nice, Joanna." Joanna arched a brow. "Hey, I was just asking questions." Charlotte laid her napkin by her plate. "Your questions don't bother me, Joanna. I believe Samantha White is innocent, and that's why I took her case. There will be those that do not agree, but I cannot help that." Joanna cocked her head. "How could you know she was innocent?" Charlotte shrugged. "A gut feeling." "That's it?" "That was it." Joanna leaned forward, a signal she wanted to kick the discussion into high gear. Charlotte met Joanna's gaze with a mixture of challenge and amusement. The girl reminded her of herself when she'd been in her mid-20s, full of fire and fight. "That's not very scientific." Rockoff cleared his throat and glanced at his father. "I'll be by to work on that shed as soon as this case is closed." His father waved a dismissive hand. "The shed will wait. Your work is more important. I know this." Mrs. Rockoff cleared away their plates. "I've been following the case in the papers. It is horrible what I'm reading. Those poor women." The mood in the room shifted from jovial to solemn. Charlotte thought about Mariah, and the moment's respite from her thoughts ended. "Do you have any leads?" Ivan said. Rockoff set his fork down. "We're working on it." He glanced at Charlotte, seemed to note her change in mood. "And Charlotte and I have early calls in the morning." "Daniel, do not leave," Mrs. Rockoff said. "You just got here." "Sorry, Mom. I didn't realize how late it was." He stood and kissed his mother and grandmother. Charlotte stood and smoothed her skirt flat. "Thank you for dinner, Mr. and Mrs. Rockoff. It was a nice break." "It was lovely to meet you, Charlotte. I hope you'll come again sometime." She nodded, touched by the woman's genuine tone. "Charlotte, can you take some dessert?" Mrs. Rockoff said. "I've got enough to feed an army. You can put it in your refrigerator at home." "Normally I would, but I'm moving in a couple of days and trying to clean out what I have. But thank you." Rockoff said his goodbyes again, shook his father's hand, punched a brother good-naturedly in the shoulder, and escorted Charlotte to his car. The day's stress hadn't drained from her shoulders, and she seemed, as she always seemed, braced for a fight. He started the engine. "You're moving?" The comment had slipped out so easily when she'd spoken to Mrs. Rockoff that she'd not thought about the fact that she'd told no one she was moving. "Yes." "Don't you have a swanky condo overlooking the river?" "Yes, it's been great." "You moving to a bigger place?" Smaller. I don't need so much space as I thought. Mind me asking where? You're full of questions. He shrugged. Just making conversation. She smiled. I doubt you've ever just made conversation, Detective. You might be surprised. I do have my moments. I've no doubt. He took the exit off the Beltway and wove through Alexandria toward her office. When he parked in front of her car, he shifted in his seat toward her. The light from a street lamp shone through and sharpened the angles on his face. So where are you moving to? Just a smaller place in Alexandria, near Seminary Road. Nice area, but not as nice as where you are. It's more convenient. His gaze narrowed. How so? Again with the questions, Detective. Just wondering why the step down. Her defenses strengthened. It's not a step down. His wrist rested easily on the steering wheel. From Riverviews to Seminary? Don't kid yourself. Why? Maybe I want to change. Is your practice in trouble? He had a talent for striking to the heart of a matter. It's fine. And it would be when she pumped in the profits from the condo sale. He tapped his fingers on the steering wheel. Why can't you just tell me? There is nothing to tell. His smile wasn't pleasant. What's made you so guarded? Was it the shooting 3 years ago? She arched a brow. Are you always this direct? Yes. Are you always this evasive? Yes. Charlotte, just tell me. He laid his hand on hers. The warmth coupled with the strength and the cover of the night was her undoing. I've been guarded since before I could walk. If you don't have loving parents, you learn to hold your cards close, and the shooting didn't help. In the moments I was in that bathroom waiting for that man to return and finish the job, I knew there was no one in the world that was going to save me. I had to save myself, and I did. She released a sigh. And I'm selling the condo because too much pro bono work and not enough high-profile cases have chewed into the firm's bottom line. Selling my condo is the only way I can save the firm. The money should buy me 6 months. And then? She smiled, hoping the simple gesture would bolster her confidence. By then, I will have landed another big fish, and I'll be fine. Just like that? Don't worry about me, Detective. I'm a cockroach. I'm a survivor in every sense of the word. As he studied her, a smile that held no warmth curled his lips. Good, because I want you around for a long time. I've redefined being careful. I'm all about security. A quip danced on the tip of her tongue, but she let it pass. See you soon, Detective. Sooner rather than later, Counselor. A sad smile tipped the edge of her lips. You know that's where Sooner got her name? How? She was born a month early, and Mariah took her first look at her and said, the kid came sooner rather than later. Somehow, Sooner just stuck. It's a catchy name. It seemed pretty cool when I was 16. Now I wish she had a more conventional name. She gripped the handle of her purse tighter. One more thing to add to the things I wish I'd done differently list. What else would you do differently? It's too late to get into that discussion. Maybe some other time. He nodded. I'm sorry again about Mariah. Thanks. She got out of his car and hurried to her own car. She clicked the lock open and slid behind the wheel. As he waited and watched in his car, she started her car. Pulling out onto the street, she glanced in the rearview mirror and realized he was slowly following behind her. When she reached the stop sign, she paused and then took a left toward her house. He followed her for 2 more blocks and then took a right. She gripped the wheel, grateful and sorry he no longer followed. The #1 rule is not to care, she said. Since she'd fled the carnival, she'd never broken the ironclad rule. Not once. Now it was becoming a habit. First with her employees, then with Sooner, and now with Rockoff. It was close to midnight when Grady stood outside the 2-story brick home. The neighborhood, tidy, look-alike lawns, neat curbs hugging well-paved streets, and houses that all spoke of stability, money, and decency. He knew firsthand how much shit hid behind respectability. Folks who lived in places like this might think they were better than him, but they were just as dishonest. Nearly every house on the block was dark. Good. He exhaled a lungful of cigarette smoke and ground out the butt in the ashtray of his truck. Tight-ass fuckers. You don't fool Grady. He got out of the car, cringing against the cold, hurried across the street. He crossed the lawn of a neat little house and hurried to the back fence. Carefully, he opened the gate. In the distance, a dog barked. His lungs burned as he jogged around the side of the house to a small side door. Pulling a screwdriver from his jacket pocket, he wedged the tip under the lock and pushed. The wood cracked and splintered, and the lock slid open. A turn of the handle, and he was inside the house. The utility room was small and painted a bright yellow. Across from the door stood the washer and dryer, piled high with freshly folded laundry. A basketball, scooter, and baseball mitt filled a corner, and there was a cat's litter box to his right. A cat wouldn't be a problem, but a dog was another matter. Those fuckers made a lot of noise. He waited, listened, but didn't hear a sound. Carefully, he moved into the house, which smelled of pine sol and pizza. He'd watched the house for a couple of days and knew the woman here lived alone with her 2 young children. He wasn't sure what had happened to her old man, but right now he didn't care. She was alone, defenseless, and that was all that mattered. He moved down a carpeted hallway and up the stairs, past dozens of framed pictures of her 2 children. The little girl reminded him of a cleaned-up, suburban version of Grace. The top step creaked, and he paused, ready to dash back down the stairs. But the house remained quiet, except for the hum of the heater. He moved to the back room and opened the cracked door. Moonlight filtered in through a window, casting a beam of light on the bed where the woman slept. She lay on her side, away from the dresser and window. He stood at the edge of the bed, watching her sleep. She had no idea that monsters didn't just lurk in the imaginations of children. Monsters lived in the real world, and sometimes they were so close you could feel their breath on your neck. She groaned, rolled on her stomach, and let out a sigh. She was pretty in a mousy sort of way. Monsters ate mice like her for breakfast. He turned and moved toward the dresser. It wasn't littered with makeup and perfume bottles like Sooner's, but was neat and clean. Carefully, he opened the top drawer and found a jewelry box. He removed it, closed the drawer, and set it on the dresser top. The hinges of the box squeaked when he opened it and inspected the contents. He smiled, removed what he'd wanted, and pocketed it. Instead of replacing the jewelry box, he set it on the floor and unzipped his pants. He fished out his dick and pissed on the box. Grinning, he zipped up his pants and glanced at the mouse. He wanted her to know he'd been in her room, standing next to her bed and watching her sleep. He wanted her to know that at any moment he could have taken that same jewelry box and beaten her to death. And he wanted her to worry and wonder when he would be back. Chapter 20. Friday, October 29th, 9 a.m. "We have 2 hits on Violent Crimes Database," Sinclair said. She stood in Rockoff's door with the file in hand. The fatigue that had been weighing him down vanished. "Where?" "Raleigh, North Carolina, 12 years ago, and Athens, Georgia, 10 years ago." She moved into his office and sat at his desk. "Hold on a minute, I want to get Garrison and Keir in here." He placed calls to both, and it was agreed the 4 would meet in the conference room. 5 minutes later, they were assembled around the large rectangular table in the windowless room. Garrison and Keir both showed signs of fatigue. Like Sinclair and Rockoff, they had been chasing down interviews on anyone who might have known something valuable about either victim. Sinclair opened the file, which, like most Violent Crimes Database reports, contained crime scene descriptions and photos, victim profiles, lab reports, and any other information that might help create a link between the crime and others like it. According to this report, the victim's name was Margaret Day, age 32. She pulled photos of the crime scene and dispersed them to the team. Rockoff studied the picture, which had eerie similarities to his 2 crime scenes. Margaret Day's body had been laid out in a green field, her hands and feet tied to stakes hammered in the ground. She wore a black dress and had a thick shock of dark hair, which flowed out around her head. Rain had dampened her body and the ground around her, and a thick mist hovered in the distance. Written on her forehead was the word witch. "Tell me about the victim," Garrison said. Sinclair flipped through the pages. She was a prostitute. She didn't work the streets, but kept an apartment where she welcomed regular clients managed by her pimp. According to her pimp, her thing was dominance. She was called the Sorceress. "They checked out all her clients?" "The ones they could find. No one gave last names, all transactions were in cash, and there were no cameras watching the building." Who reported her missing? No one. She was found in a wooded area by a couple of hikers who'd ventured off the trail. According to the medical examiner, she'd been sexually assaulted several times before she died. At the time she was found, she'd been dead about 5 days. She was staked to the ground. How did she die? Rockoff said. The medical examiner suspected drowning. Sinclair tapped an agitated finger on the file. Why drown them? Kicks? Excitement? Maybe he needs information or proof, Rockoff said. He needs to assure himself that they are witches. Why does he care about a confession? Garrison said. Maybe he's got a perverted sense of justice. Garrison nodded. Go on. Maybe he doesn't feel justified killing an innocent. He's only about destroying the guilty. Think about the crime scenes. He's almost warning whoever finds the body that they have found something evil and dangerous. Garrison shook his head. That's one hell of a theory. Rockoff took the next file from Sinclair. This violent crimes database report is from Georgia, 10 years ago. He flipped through the pages. Alice Carrington, age 35. She worked as an Athens librarian and vanished after a Halloween party. Found 2 weeks later, wooded area, staked to the ground. Let me guess, she was wearing a witch costume, Sinclair said. Rockoff nodded. That's correct. And like the others, she was sexually assaulted. There are no other hits, Garrison said. None, Sinclair said, and I've checked. So, assuming his first victim was Mariah Wells, his first recorded kill is 18 years ago in Alexandria, Virginia, the next in Raleigh, North Carolina, and the last we know of is Athens, Georgia. Assuming there are no other victims, his cooling-off periods lasted 6 years and then 2 years. For almost a decade, he doesn't kill? Assuming there are no others, Garrison said. The first 3 bodies were left off the beaten track. There could be others never found. Mariah was by the road, Sinclair said. But she'd been moved, Rockoff said, and I'd bet not by the killer. Garrison traced his jawline with the edge of his reading glasses. Still no trace of Grady Tate? No, he's crawled under a rock. Was there any DNA in the other cases? Keir said. Rockoff scanned the file. In Austin, traces of semen were found on the victim. We can see if we've got a match between that case and what the medical examiner collected from under Diane Young's fingernails. He's so careful about his planning. I can't believe he'd leave behind DNA, Sinclair said. Maybe because it's not on file anywhere, Rockoff said. His pace is much faster now, Keir said, and a faster pace means he's going to make a mistake very soon. I'd like to think he's already made that mistake and we've just missed it, Rockoff said. He studied the locations of the murders. Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia. All the murders we have took place in the Mid-Atlantic and South. Grady Tate's carnival travels the Mid-Atlantic and South, Sinclair said. We've got to find Grady. He is the key to all this, Keir said. Rockoff glanced at the files. One other thing. All the murders took place in October. Perfection was its own brand of holiness. This, he understood, had been the key to his survival all these years. He'd been careful to control his impulses, knowing a man who let his emotions run amok was a fool doomed to fail. He'd made a lot of mistakes in his past, and had let emotions rule him. He'd been in danger of falling prey to his own needs when he'd met the woman that had brought calm to his life. She'd given him hope, showed him that goodness was all around, and she had given him the strength to maintain strict control over his life. And then she had turned on him. A glass of whiskey in his hand, he stared down at the letter that had arrived this morning. He'd gone to her with hat in hand and opened his heart to her. She'd been quiet and told him she needed to think, all the while knowing this letter had been posted. Neatly typed wording, precise, not a word wasted, and cutting to the core. If she thought she could leave him, she was wrong. She was his, and she belonged to him. He wanted to kill her tonight. He wanted to strap her to his board and dunk her head into the cool waters until she screamed for mercy and confessed her sins. But he wouldn't kill her. Not yet. But soon. There was work to be finished before month's end. He needed to vanquish more evil, cleanse his soul. Draining the last of the whiskey, he carefully folded the letter and tucked it back in the cream-colored envelope. He glanced at the razor on the workbench and longed to make a few quick slices into his flesh to ease the tension. Simple, straight cuts that weren't too deep would make him feel so much better. But as tempting as it was to release into the pain, now was not the time for games that would weaken him. He reached for a piece of wood and a knife. He began to carve the rounded end into a sharp tip. He didn't need more stakes, but he needed restraint, strength, courage. This time, he was killing the one that had enticed him to the dark side 18 years ago. She'd been called Grace then. Now she fancied Charlotte. Either way, she and her assistant were next. Chapter 21. Saturday, October 30th, 7:14 a.m. Early Saturday morning, Charlotte wore her faded cutoffs, a black t-shirt, and tennis shoes. Her hair was pulled into a top knot. She'd been working since dawn, assembling the last of the boxes and getting ready for movers scheduled to arrive between 8 and 10. Sleep had been impossible. Thoughts of Mariah tumbled and prodded her each time she'd closed her eyes, so in the end, she'd just given up on sleep. As she glanced around the condo at the pile of boxes, she conceded to a sense of relief. There was a time when she'd convinced herself that this place had fit her like a glove, but much like the too expensive outfit that couldn't be returned, she'd often not felt wholly comfortable here. She'd never gotten past the feeling that the real owners would burst into the space and demand that she leave. The front bell buzzed, and she glanced at her red sports watch. 7:45. The movers were early. The one time she needed them to be late, they were early. She hurried to the door and, without looking in the peephole, snapped it open. Rockoff stood at her threshold holding 2 cups of coffee. Detective? Counselor. He handed her a coffee. Moving day? It is, and it's not a good time to visit. Never a good time to visit with the cops. He smiled and sipped his coffee. Let's chat. I can't, not now. I'm under the gun with this move. A smile that wasn't a smile tipped his lips. I'll help. I don't need your help. He shrugged. Too bad. Leave. No. He stepped over the threshold and brushed past her. He surveyed the collection of boxes, set down his coffee cup, and shrugged off his sport jacket. When did you say the movers were coming? About an hour, and I refuse to pay them extra while they wait and watch me pack. Then we better get busy. Where do we start? The kitchen? He nodded and moved into the kitchen. He whistled his appreciation. So this is how the other half lives. She'd only heated soup and made toast in the space, but it was a designer's dream. A muted palette of blues and greens stood as a backdrop to white Carrara marble countertops, a crystal backsplash that mirrored hanging lights, stainless steel Wolf appliances, and a wine refrigerator stocked with expensive wines. This was the kind of kitchen she'd dreamed of as a kid, and for a time all her dreams had come true. But now she could no longer support the dream. She grabbed an empty box and handed it to Rockoff. You can start wrapping the dishes in the cabinet. Why not have the movers do this? I don't trust them with the delicate stuff. She turned her attention to a stack of pots, which she'd laid out on a farmhouse-style table surrounded by 8 upholstered chairs. Grabbing newspaper, she began to wrap. You mentioned that Mariah had a date that last night. Yes, I got the impression he was a local and he'd come to see the carnival. We always had a lot of local boys coming around the carnival looking to hook up or seeing if they could score drugs. He raised a brow. You're wondering if I'm guilty of either. I'm a cop. I'm paid to wonder. He filled a box with wrapped plates and sealed it with packing tape. She shoved aside the old defensive feeling. Sorry, I guess you can take the girl out of the carny, but not the carny out of the girl. I'll never forget how people looked at me when I was a kid. That why you've perfected the polished image? 2 pots clanged together as she dropped them in a box. At this point, she didn't care so much about her stuff. She just wanted it moved and gone. After Mariah died, I knew I had to leave. I swore the rest of my life would be different. So you rejected all things carny and became the uptight snob? The fitting description rankled her nerves. Several counterpoints danced on the tip of her tongue. Trying to decide which argument to hurl at me first? She smiled. Am I that obvious? I'm learning to see through the veneer. He winked at her and carried the 2 packed boxes to the foyer by the front door. Irritated, she picked up another empty box and dumped a couple of never-used copper pots inside. You cannot read me. He reappeared with an empty box in hand. Yes, I can. Just because we had sex doesn't mean that you know me. But I do. When she opened her mouth to argue again, he shook his head. Tell me about the night Mariah died. Sighing, she shook her head. She was working, and then she had a date with a boy I'd never met. He was taking her to dinner and a movie in town. She was excited because he was taking her on a real date, meaning a lot of boys showed up with a bottle of wine and an offer to park somewhere. This guy, she said, had been a gentleman. Did she date a lot? From the time she turned 14, it was impossible to keep her around the carnival. She searched for every chance she could to get away. Sudden emotion choked her throat. Mariah was so desperate for another life. I saw it, but I couldn't help her. I was consumed with my own fears and dreams. I wish I'd paid more attention to her. Maybe she would have stayed in that last night. You were just a kid. Don't carry that burden. But she did carry the burden, along with another far heavier. That last night, Mariah said that Grady was very angry about her date. She took pleasure in making him worry. She bragged that he had given her an expensive necklace, and she was going to wear it on her date. He was possessive. Very. Where was Grady that night? Working the rides, making sure everything ran smoothly. We only had a couple of nights left in town, and it was the big push to make cash. But he could have been anywhere that night. Yeah. Could he have killed Mariah? You asked me that last night. And you've had a chance to sleep on it. She sighed. I don't know now. Maybe. He wouldn't be the first man to kill someone he loved. She was unable to say the word lover. Her date gave her a rose when he asked her out. She'd forgotten that detail. But I guess that doesn't help too much. 18 years and a rose purchase. Not likely. She closed her eyes and let her mind drift. She'd spent so many years forgetting that her ability to remember had grown rusty. She also said he was uptight, a straight arrow. He had taken a semester off from school, but planned to return in January. Why had he dropped out? He'd been sick. Images were pushing their way to the forefront of her mind. And he was worried about going back. It was important to him that he succeed in school. Did he say which school? No. A fall dropout 18 years ago from a college near Alexandria. He told her he could barely afford the in-state tuition. Rockoff retrieved his notebook from his jacket pocket and scribbled down the details. Why would he start killing again, here and now? She asked. We think he's killed other women in Raleigh and Athens. Those towns were major carnival stops. What were some of the other cities? Nashville, Charleston, Roanoke, Virginia, Asheville, North Carolina, Atlanta. Grady would have the full list. He was good about keeping notes on the different stops. Did you keep any kind of log? No records. It was all informal. You ever read anyone that really gave you the spooks? Well, there were guys that tried to get more than a reading. I kept a baseball bat under my table for those guys. But there were times when the random person came through, and you could feel the resentment and anger. You felt it? My mother taught me how to read people. She was good at it, but I was great at it. The problem with Mom was that she stopped believing that it was science and started thinking her talents were really psychic. Toward the end, she believed she could read minds. I never made that mistake. I read people's body language, which I guess is what generates the feeling. You think you could read me? She shook her head. I don't think that's such a good idea. Why not? Given our history? You said yourself it was no big deal. It wasn't. He held out his hand. Then read me. The challenge in his voice had her folding her arms over her chest. You won't like it. He grinned. Try me. This was a test. She didn't know why he was testing her, but he was. Give me your hand. She took his hand and turned it over. His skin was warm and his fingertips calloused. Strong lines creased his palm. For some, the lines had significance. Past lives, future, love, death. A reasonably smart person could make anyone believe. The trick was guessing what the client wanted to hear. So what did Daniel Rockoff want? You are young. Not so young. Younger than me. Not enough to count. You have ambition, hate obstacles. She glanced at his military college ring. You are used to command. In school, you rose to the top. He nodded, his eyes keen with interest. His pulse quickened just a bit. "You are from a hard-working immigrant family, but you dress like a man who wants to rise to the very top, just as you did in college." "You've met my family. No magic there." He stared at her with an intense gaze. "It's never magic. It's all observation and guesswork." She traced her index finger over his palm. The faint callus on his left ring finger told her something she'd not realized before. "You dress as if you would like to be a chief, a mayor, or a senator, but those titles hold little interest for you. I think that's why your first wife left you. She wanted the big titles for you, but you see the real power behind the scenes." He was silent for several moments. "I never told you about my first wife." She frowned, a slight callus at the base of your ring finger. "Then how did you determine why she left?" "Lucky guess." He captured her hand in his and slowly turned it over. His grip wasn't gentle or painful, but it was unbreakable. "Now it's my turn." The grim set of his jaw told her she'd struck a nerve. "I don't need a reading." His grip remained firm. "Turnabout is fair play." "You asked for your reading. I do not wish one." He traced her lifeline. "You are at a crossroads." She arched a brow. "What tipped you off, the hundreds of boxes?" "It's more than that," he said. "You are questioning." Charlotte arched a brow. "You mean like when the movers are going to be here?" "Like, why do you do what you do? You can catch the big fish, but the question is, do you want to?" "You mean I'm afraid that I might get bitten by another big fish with teeth? Believe me, I'm not afraid of teeth, and for the record, I know how to bite hard." A smile tipped the edge of his lips. "I remember." Immediately, color rose in her face, and she remembered the second time they'd slept together. She'd been beyond excited to see him, and they barely made it to the hotel room before they'd each dropped their clothes. He'd stripped the coverlet from the bed, and they'd fallen onto the mattress. When her orgasm shuddered through her, she'd bitten his shoulder. "You hate letting go more than anything in the world. It's why you only drink at home, and then only moderately. You are drawn to the idea of family, but fear it as well. You've noticed my wine refrigerator in the kitchen and my reputation for being a non-drinker. No one wants an out-of-control attorney." "You take control to the next level, and I know why that is now." She didn't want to ask why and show him she cared. However, her voice failed her, and all she could manage was a cocked eyebrow. He leaned forward, his lips close to her ear. "You're afraid." "No, I am not." "You are. You're afraid the real truth will come out." She cleared her throat as her heart pulsed rapidly under his fingertips. God, did he know? "And what truth is that?" He shook his head. "I want you to tell me." If he didn't look so serious, she'd have called him a con man. She wanted to tell him he didn't know anything, but somehow she feared he did know the truth. Everyone says they want to know the truth, but they really don't. Once the fantasy is destroyed, the fun ends. Not for everyone. She wanted to connect with him, but the words would not form. All she had at this moment was her body and the ability to touch. She kissed him. He cupped the back of her neck and pulled her to him. His kiss began gently, but quickly intensified before he broke the contact. "Has sex always been an escape for you?" The whispered words didn't soften the challenge. A good attorney knew when to avoid and when to attack. No more of either. "Sex was a cold, lonely place, until you." His gaze darkened, but the meaning in their depths escaped her. Was he pleased? His hand traced her palm, and then rose up her arm to the back of her neck. His hold wasn't urgent, it was possessive. With deliberate pressure, he guided her face to him. She could balk, say no, demand that he leave her alone with her secrets, but she'd never said no to him in bed and knew she'd soon confess. When his lips touched hers, a frisson of desire shot through her body. Her muscles tightened, she clenched handfuls of his shirt and pulled him toward her. His hand roamed up her shirt to the underside of a lace-covered breast. He cupped her nipple, squeezed. Her heartbeat thundered against her ribs as she arched into him. The movers would be here soon. She had so much to handle, and all she could think about was Rockoff inside her. She reached for the buckle of his pants. He stilled her hands. "Bedroom." "This way." She guided him quickly through the maze of boxes to her room. The room was entirely packed, and all that remained on the bed were the sheets and a few blankets for this last night in her place. He pulled her shirt off and reached for the elastic waistband of her athletic shorts. "I want to see you naked." She gripped his hand, her breath stopped in her throat. He stared at her, unmoving, as she listened to the fast beat of her heart. "Yes or no?" "Yes." Her voice sounded ragged, like a stranger's. He pulled down her shorts and let them drop around her ankles. As he pushed her back toward the bed, she reached for his belt buckle. Seconds later, he was on top of her, and then inside her, moving with hard, even thrusts. Her breasts bounced with each push. Tense, urgent fingers ran up his thighs. "I've been thinking about this for days," he said. "It's been all I can do not to touch you." She understood. During the frenetic hum of her days, or the silent, still moments of the night, her thoughts often strayed to him. The tempo between them rose, and energy in her swelled until finally it exploded inside her. She tipped back her head and growled his name, too lost in desire to be ashamed. He waited until the last of the shudders had passed through her body, and she opened her eyes. He cupped a handful of her hair in his fist and held her head steady as he moved faster and faster in her. "Look at me," he growled. She couldn't take her gaze from his features as he clenched his fingers tighter into her hair. His power snapped between them as she watched the play of agony and ecstasy on his face, and finally his body went rigid. He collapsed on top of her, and his rapid heartbeat thrummed against her chest. For several long seconds they lay, too spent to speak. Finally, he rolled on his side, facing her, his arm draped over her belly. Again, it felt as if he wanted to stake a claim. "You do that to me," he rasped. He took her hand and laid it on his beating heart. "No one else does that to me." The muscle drummed wildly under her fingertips. "What is it with you? Why can't I just do this and walk away?" He opened his eyes and looked at her. "Admit it, it's more than just sex." "Yes." He traced a circle around her belly button. "How can an attraction be so strong?" She turned her head toward him. "We're all about adrenaline, pure energy. Both burn hot, but don't last." "Are you tired of me?" "No." "Good. I can't imagine I'll get tired of you." "You will. It's the nature of men and women." "Maybe I will get tired of you, but I'm thinking it will take time. A long, long time." Even a long, long time didn't feel adequate. He traced a strand of hair out of her eyes. "Tell me your secret." In this moment, she felt closer to him than she had to anyone in her life. The walls dropped, and she felt so vulnerable. She didn't want to lose him, but it was better to tell him now and cut her losses. If he hated her for what she was about to say, then better now than later. She shifted her gaze to the ceiling. Tears filled her eyes and trailed down the sides of her face. "Sooner is my child, not Mariah's." The silence in the room was heavy and broken only by the hammering of her heart. He rolled on his side and faced her. His gaze was unreadable. "She doesn't look like you." "No, she looks like my mother and my sister. There are no traces of me in her, but she is mine. I was 16 when she was born." Fear lingered behind the words as she waited for rejection and censure. "You see, I told you the tangles were thicker than you realized." He shifted his weight on top of her so that they were almost nose to nose. "Who is her father?" "A boy who lied about his name and his love so that he could seduce me." "Not Grady." "No." His gaze searched hers an extra beat before relief flickered. "She's a lot like you. She's got your spirit. When I interviewed her, she felt so familiar to me, but I couldn't place her." Tears fell down the sides of her face and dripped on the mattress. "Are you disappointed in me or angry?" "No." "Why?" He traced a strand of hair from her eyes. "My heart breaks for the kid that was alone and desperate for a better life for herself and her baby." "I'm not that kid anymore." "She's still driving the bus, Charlotte. That kid, Grace, is the reason you are where you are." "For so long, I just wanted to forget Grace." "Stop trying to forget her. She's not going anywhere, and I don't want her to. She's a part of you, and I like all your parts." He kissed her on the lips. "Have you told Sooner?" "No, she thinks Mariah was her mother. Grady lied to Sooner about her mother. I'm sure he was doing it to spite me for leaving and punish me for Mariah's death, and I've been too scared to correct her. But you are going to tell her? Yes, I have to tell her. Do you want me with you? No, I'll have to do that one on my own. Let me know what I can do. You do not want to get dragged in my family drama. He brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. You act like I'm afraid of a little trouble. She stared into his dark and determined gaze. Why do you want me? Why don't you find yourself someone sweet, uncomplicated, and who isn't terrified of commitment or has an 18-year-old kid? You are a good-looking man, Daniel Rockoff. I would think you could find someone a little more perfect. The creases around his eyes deepened when he smiled. I got a thing for you, counselor, and as much as I've tried, I can't shake it. My baggage could get a little heavy. Let me be the judge. He kissed her. You ever reconsidered breaking bread with me? Nervous laughter bubbled as she swept away another tear. You should be running for the hills at this point. Is that a yes or a no to dinner? I did break bread with you, at your mother's kitchen table, no less. I was thinking more along the lines of a date. She smiled. Us on a date. I'm not sure if I can picture that, Detective. Daniel. Call me Daniel. She traced the strong line of his jaw. I haven't told Sooner the truth, and when I do, my life could get messy. Give me a real obstacle, Charlotte. His hand slid up her belly, and his knuckle brushed the underside of her breast. The one I just gave is fairly significant. You're gonna have to do better than that. He frowned. Let me share this with you. She traced the line of his jaw with her thumb. I won't blame you if you change your mind. Stop yammering. We need to get dressed. The movers will be here in minutes. That would be embarrassing if they found us. What would people say? Her tone was light, but the meaning wasn't. People were going to talk a lot, not just about them, but her past and Sooner. He nudged her side. Break bread with me, counselor. Any kind of real relationship with him was so foolish. It would end. It was a matter of time. Tangles ruined things. Fine. Dinner. As she rose, he grabbed her by the waist. Is that a tattoo on your lower back? Immediately, she pulled free and righted her pants. No. He rose up off the bed and refastened his pants. It's kind of sexy. It's not. Sure it is. Let me see it. She faced him. No, and please do not tell anyone. No one knows about it? No. If it bothers you so much, why didn't you just have it removed? It's a reminder that Grace Wells was capable of doing some really stupid things. It is a reminder that I should think long and hard before I act. He brushed the hair off her forehead with his index finger. You didn't think too hard about us. She hadn't thought at all. She simply reacted. And that is what worries me. His hand dropped to her waist. Can I see it? She clamped her hand over his. No, you cannot. His hand easily slipped out of her grip. Pretty please. Why? I don't want any secrets between us. Plus, I'm thinking it's going to be pretty hot. It's not hot. Let me be the judge. Again, she could say no, but why start now? She gave him her back and lowered the elastic. It's a tiger. Mariah and I thought we were so clever when we got these. We thought we were different. He traced the tiger with his finger. I like it, and it suits you. You are a tiger. He kissed her on the shoulder in such a tender way that it made her still. She had the urge to melt into his body and forget about the movers. She wanted to make love to him. Love, not sex. The front door buzzed. She sighed. That must be the movers. I'll help you finish packing. There's not much to do. Just get back to your case, and I'll finish up as they carry out the rest. Are you tossing me out? Yes. Why? Because I can't think with you around, and I need to make sure this job gets done right. Too many things going in too many places. You're not keeping everything? No, I'm downsizing and simplifying big time. Why? It's time. Chapter 22. Saturday, October 30th, 5:20 p.m. Sooner flipped the closed sign on her shop to open and stood back, smiling. She hugged her arms over her chest, feeling a thrill of excitement. She was officially a business owner. She backed away from the door and slowly took a seat behind the table she'd set up for her readings. With a critical eye, she surveyed her shop. Mark had gone home sick for the day, so she was officially in charge, and it felt good. The deep purple walls gave the room a soft, moody vibe that would enhance her readings. Setting, Grady had always said, was important to the right mood. She draped swatches of purple fabrics on the walls, which she'd hoped would hide her bad paint job and the uneven spots in the wallboard. She was too early in the process to have retail items for sale, but that would come. She had big dreams for this place. The bronze Indian bells Mark had allowed her to hang over the front door clanged, and she tried not to smile too much. She didn't want to look excited or desperate, but mysterious, almost as if she was doing the client the favor. She started to shuffle her tarot cards. A man stepped in and glanced around the shop. He was dressed in khakis and a dark blue collared shirt, cuffed with gold links at his wrist. He wore his hair short and neatly combed, and a wedding band that had a soft patina that suggested he'd been married several years. Conservative, uptight. Those words clanged in her head, and she couldn't imagine a guy like him here, searching the cards for answers. Immediately, her heart dropped. "Can I help you?" He glanced around the shop, assessing and cataloging. "I was looking for the card shop?" He wanted directions. Of course. She almost laughed. "Down the street on the corner and next to the pizza shop. You can't miss it." Smiling, he looked at her for the first time. "Thanks." Ask for the sale. It had been one of Grady's mantras. If you don't ask, you'll never know. "Interested in a reading?" He held up his hands. "I don't think so. I'm just looking for an anniversary card for my wife." Anxiety churned, and she reminded herself that he was no different than any dude that wandered into her tent. "Let me read you, and then I'll tell you the perfect note to write in the card." Most guys couldn't write much beyond "I love ya" on a card. Nice, but not totally inspiring. The guy laughed, but hesitated. "The perfect note." "Perfect. The goodwill that comes your way will be well worth the $20. $20? I can write "I love you" for free. If you want a hot, steamy night on your anniversary, you're going to have to do better than those 3 words. He let the door close behind him, and he took a step into the shop. She imagined herself fishing, line in the water, and the fish had just grabbed a hold of her bait. What guy, even an uptight dude like this, wouldn't explore the possibility of hot, steamy sex with his wife? "So what do I have to do?" he asked. "Sit in the chair and let me read your cards. I'll give you a few insights and then tell you what to write." "This is a con." "No con." She sounded calm, maybe even a little ethereal, a word she'd looked up online just yesterday. "Spiritual insights." Shuffling the cards, she nodded to the chair by the desk. "It will be the best $20 you ever spent." He shrugged, glanced around as if checking to make sure no one was peeking in the shop. "Yeah, sure, why not?" He pulled out the 20 and handed it to her. Tucking the 20 in her empty cash drawer, her smile warmed. "Do you have a name?" "Honestly," he said, leaning toward her, "I'd rather not give it. This is just a little weird for me, and I half expect someone to jump out with a camera and tell me I've been punked." "No cameras, no worries. Just you and me and the cards." He relaxed back in his chair. "Great." She set the shuffled deck in front of him. "Now I need for you to shuffle the cards." "Why?" "So you can put your energy into them, and once you've shuffled them 3 times, divide the stack into 3 even piles." "Will do." Long, neat fingers shuffled and divided the cards. She set a timer at her side for 15 minutes, and then arranged the cards carefully and deliberately in the Celtic cross pattern. She'd give her first customer a reading that gave him some answers, but raised others as well. The other questions often prompted people to buy more time or return later. Carefully, she studied the 10 cards. The Judge, the Destroyer, Nothingness. It was an unusual spread for a man that seemed so mild. "I think there's more to you than I first realized." "That's what I keep telling my boss." His eyes danced with laughter. She lowered her gaze back to the cards. Death sat in the center, and this, of course, could simply mean change, but this grouping didn't feel like change. It felt like emptiness, and when she closed her eyes, she had the sense that she was falling into a great abyss. A cold chill passed through her body. She'd never experienced a reading like this. The man leaned forward and studied her with an intensity that made her stomach churn. You look so much like her, he whispered. Her eyes snapped open. What? You look like her. Who? He smiled. A woman who once read my cards. You look so much like her. Are you certain I've not read your cards before? She said. Perhaps at the carnival last week? This is my first time in this shop. Our paths have crossed before. She stared at him, feeling energy buzz from the cards into her fingertips. On reflex, she moved her foot to the panic button Grady had always maintained under her desk, but it wasn't there. Grady was not at the ready to save her. Mark had gone home sick. She was on her own. He cocked his head. Are you going to give me my reading? I need to know what to say to my wife so that she'll forgive me and take me back. You said you were buying her an anniversary card. It is our anniversary. She hasn't gotten her divorce yet. She opened the cash drawer and laid his 20 between them. I don't think that I can help you. Sorry. Why not? Now you've got me curious. What do you see in the cards? Tell him what he wants to hear. She loves you, and she will take you back. She will remember her love for you. His gaze sharpened. Really? Yes, really. Now I must go, sir. I have a party to work this evening. He didn't touch the money. I don't want a refund. I want you to tell me what you see. That your future is bright and wonderful. He rose, but this time when he stood, tension gripped him, sharpening every muscle in his body. He'd first seemed affable and a bit of a fool, but no more. I think that you are right. I feel good about the future. Good. Do you feel good about the future? She rose. Me? Of course I do. That's good. You should feel good about it. A tentative smile teased the edge of her lips. Because of my new business. Because God is going to cleanse you of your sins and set you free. He smiled. Who are you? Doesn't really matter. He turned and very calmly left the shop. For several seconds the bells jangled and swayed. She got up and ran to the door and locked it. Shit, a nut on the first day. She glanced at the clock, and seeing she was going to be late even if she hurried, she grabbed her satchel and moved to the back of the shop. She'd parked in the back alley. Sooner shut off the lights, except for the 3 glowing lava lamps that Mark kept burning, and exited the back door. She shoved her key in the lock, twisted the bolt in place, and then jingled the handle to make sure the door was locked. Under the glow of the moonlight and a blinking street lamp, she moved to her beat-up Ford pickup truck. She shoved her key into the lock. She was looking forward to tonight. She liked Charlotte and thought the two of them might be good for each other. She could use a little polishing, and Aunt Charlotte could use a little mussing up. As she opened the door and tossed her purse on the seat, a strong hand banded around her waist and another clamped over her mouth. She immediately kicked and clawed at the hands. She jabbed an elbow and heard her attacker grunt. Hope I broke a bone, motherfucker. You are an abomination, but I won't send your worthless soul to hell before it is cleansed. She dug under the folds of her gown and found her phone. He snatched it from her, dropped it to the ground, and smashed it with his boot. He jabbed a needle in her neck and shoved in a plunger. Spots quickly formed in front of her eyes as her body lost control. God, was she going to die at the very start of her new life? Maybe Grady had been right. Maybe she should have stayed with him where she was safe. Her vision went dark, and her legs slumped. Her world went black. Charlotte's nerves were in shreds after her confession to Daniel today, and tattered emotions aside, the movers had also arrived, a half-hour late. She'd spent the morning supervising the move, cringing when movers dinged a wall, and yelping when they dropped her sofa. A panicked call to the handyman and a little pleading had him at her condo by 3 to patch and paint the wall. By the time she'd written him a check, the paint on the newly smoothed wall corner was drying. By 5, everything had either gone into storage, to charity, or to her new apartment, a cramped, unorganized mess. Thankfully, she'd kept her evening dress she'd planned to wear to Angie's fundraiser in her car, along with her hair and makeup gear. Tomorrow would be all about sorting, organizing, and making sense of her new place. It would have been so easy to sequester herself behind the boxes in her new apartment, pour a glass of wine, and hide in a hot tub. There were enough legitimate reasons to bail on Angie's charity event, but Angie had worked hard on her Halloween fundraiser, and it did mean a lot to her. Charlotte could be a bitch and a ball-buster, and there were many who didn't like her, but no one truthfully could say she'd ever broken a promise. She'd told Angie she'd be at the party, and so she shoved her raw emotions down deep inside her and put on a grand smile. Faking it was a specialty she'd honed over the last 18 years. She wouldn't talk to Sooner about the truth tonight, but the day fast approached. To avoid it now, no matter what her personal cost, would be far too cruel to Sooner. By 7, she stood in the hotel, staring at the ballroom decorated with drapes of orange and black fabric, pumpkins, and black and white lights that gave off a spooky glow. There was a buffet table on the long wall and 3 bars set up around the room. Angie deserved real credit. Not only had she cajoled the Regis into donating their ballroom for the night, but she'd also managed to get a band to donate their services, the caterer to give her a great deal, and a decorator to dress the room for a nominal fee. Angie had called upon all the area's rich and elite to come and be entertained, so they'd open their wallets, and it appeared they had come in force. Charlotte had worn her hair loose and curled around her shoulders. She'd chosen a sleek black dress that skimmed her curves and dipped low in the back. High heels and diamond earrings and bracelet completed a simple and elegant look. She'd been unable to bring herself to wear a costume, as Angie had requested, but she had compromised and purchased a lovely mask to carry and wear if need be. Angie, wearing a sleek red dress, wore a red witch's hat and makeup that made her green eyes pop like a cat's. "I should be grateful for the mask." Charlotte smiled as she saw a group of noted businessmen and their wives chatting. They were dressed as members of the Starship Enterprise. "I'm feeling underdressed." She smiled. "Good. You've outdone yourself, Angie." "So far it's going well. I think it will be a profitable night." A waiter passed with a tray of champagne, and both women declined. "I was hoping your girl Sooner would be here by now." "Your girl? She's late?" "By almost an hour. I'd asked her to be here early for setup." "That surprises me. She was looking forward to this." "Tips alone would be generous." "Have you called her?" "Twice. No answer." She opened her slim black purse and checked her cell. No calls. Worry crept up her spine. "I can go track her down." "She was my big draw. I mean, the clowns are fun and the juggler entertaining, but people like the idea of walking on the dark side." "The dark side?" "You know what I mean. I don't care how rich or famous someone is. They are just as curious about the future as the next guy." Angie waved away her concerns. She's likely forgotten and working late at her shop. Then why doesn't she answer her phone? Maybe she turns it off during readings? I mean, a cell sure would break the vibe. That made sense. Sooner, like her, had been raised never to break character. "I'll have a seat at her table and fill in until she gets here." She was going to read tarot cards. "Do you have cards?" "No, I generally don't carry tarot cards," she said, smiling. "But I can read palms." Maybe Sooner had just blown them off. She was young and pretty, and men loved her, and she'd missed that one appointment with Charlotte. "You can read palms?" Angie's relief prompted a smile. "You haven't heard the tidbits about my Carney days?" "I had. I kind of thought you'd cracked a joke and it had gotten blown up." "No, no joke. I worked the circuit when I was a kid with my family." Angie laughed. "One day you're going to have to tell me all about it." The band filed onto the bandstand in the corner and started tuning up. "It's not so very interesting." "Charlotte, you were raised in a carnival and not in high society as we'd all thought. Sorry to burst your bubble, but that's interesting." Charlotte let her gaze move across the room. "Where's my table?" "The red draped one over there. I've posted a sign, and I think you already have a line." Charlotte arched a brow. If you'd bet her 2 weeks ago she'd be here now, reading palms, she'd have wagered everything she owned against you, sure she'd win. And yet here she was, with no time to fret or worry, but simply to perform. "Okay. Are you any good at this?" "I used to be pretty good back in the day." "Kinda like riding a bike?" "Let's hope." Angie stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. "So were palms your thing, or did you read cards?" "Angie, do you want me to trip down memory lane or read palms?" "Honestly, I'm dying to hear your story, but I can wait." "Good." As she moved toward her table, her worries about Sooner grew with each passing minute. Had Grady told Sooner the truth to drive a wedge between her and Charlotte? No, you wouldn't do that. You know Sooner's too curious and direct. If you told her about me, I'd be the first person she'd find." She flipped open her phone and called Daniel's cell. It went to voicemail on the first ring. She listened to his deep, clear voice. "You've reached Detective Daniel Rockoff. Leave a message."
"Hey, this is Charlotte. I'm at Angie's thing. Sooner never showed. Might not be anything, but something doesn't feel right. Could you send a car by her shop?" She dropped her voice a notch. "I appreciate it, Daniel. Thanks." She closed the phone, knowing Rockoff would take care of the matter. A sense of calm washed over her anxious nerves when she thought about him. Like it or not, he had worked his way under her skin. She moved toward her table, stopping and chatting with people she knew from the community. She made a point to ask folks for their names, what they thought about readings, and what they hoped to gain. She filed away the tidbits and invited all to stop by and visit her so she could read their palms. She'd been working the crowd since she was 13, and it was something she did better than anyone. Judge Lawless and his wife appeared at her table.
"Counselor."
Charlotte's grin was broad and welcoming. "Judge and Mrs. Lawless, have a seat. Be my first customers."
The judge looked grim, and his wife reserved. Neither looked as if they wanted to be here, but the judge understood politics and never missed an opportunity to shake the right hands. He pulled 2 20s from his pocket and tucked them in the fishbowl on Charlotte's table. "It's for charity." "All proceeds go toward the Children's Cancer Wing at Alexandria Hospital." She grinned and waved her hand toward the seats in front of her desk. "This is an opportunity you cannot pass up." Mrs. Lawless smiled coolly. The judge scowled. Charlotte sat. "Now, who's going first?" The two looked at each other. He nodded, and Mrs. Lawless sat in her seat. "Me, I suppose." Charlotte grinned. She'd heard faint rumors that the couple's marriage wasn't doing well. Some said he'd moved out, but the judge, to her knowledge, had not spoken of a separation. No doubt her past, like their separation, would soon be churning on the rumor mill for months. "So let me see what you have going on here." She studied the deeply rutted lines in the woman's palm. "You have a very strong lifeline. You've lived many past lives." "I have," polite but not impressed. "At least 8. Charlotte traced the line. "And I think you're going to live a long life." Mrs. Lawless stiffened a little. "Good." "Not impressed, Wellington." The judge rolled his eyes and walked away. Mrs. Lawless sighed as she watched her husband walk away. "He can be blunt." "I've noticed that in court." He had a reputation for being a real hard-ass, and most attorneys groaned when they drew Lawless. Charlotte suspected the judge's wife was just as hard a sale as him. However, she'd met, welcomed, and conquered similar folk. "Let's try this again." Without her husband looming, she relaxed a little. "Sure." Charlotte traced the woman's lifeline. "The judge has promised you a vacation, but he is hesitating." Mrs. Lawless's eyes narrowed. "We've canceled some of the best vacations. No secret there." She glanced at Mrs. Lawless's small diamond engagement ring, sandwiched against a larger, brighter, solitaire diamond. Life had been good to them, but she still cherished the ring he'd given her on their wedding day. "But he loves you very much. Vacations don't matter to him, but you do." Mrs. Lawless stiffened and pulled her hand free. Charlotte knew she'd hit a nerve. "I see more. Don't you want to hear it?" She hesitated. "I'm not sure." A faint heart never wins. Challenged, the woman extended her hand. "I see vacation pamphlets lying about the house and notes on trips." When Mrs. Lawless didn't respond, Charlotte knew she'd missed the mark and quickly turned the negative into a positive. "These pamphlets are old, from vacations never taken." Mrs. Lawless's grip softened. "Yes." "Get more brochures, Mrs. Lawless. Plan your dream vacation, and I believe you will find that for which you search." The older woman's face had softened, and she stared at Charlotte, clearly surprised. "What am I searching for?" "For the marriage you had when you first married. I believe it is there, but you must dig for it." "What if he doesn't want to find it?" Charlotte glanced up and looked beyond Mrs. Lawless to her husband, who kept stealing glances in their direction. "He wants it." "Thank you." "Thank you for your donation." After Mrs. Lawless left, Charlotte had a stream of customers. The old tactics of using body language as well as the bits of information she'd collected as she walked to the table added credibility to her readings. The evening progressed smoothly enough.
She read palms, joked with attorneys, judges, and clients, but all the while she kept glancing toward the door, hoping to see Sooner rush in, harried and full of good excuses to explain her no-show status. Sooner never arrived, and when Charlotte could break away to call, she never answered her phone. Though the event was proving to be a real success, Charlotte's worries grew.
"So you are a popular attraction?"
Levi Kane's comment had her raising her head. Charlotte smiled out of habit rather than joy. "It seems to be going well." He sat at her table.
"You've had quite the line for the last hour."
"Most love their fortune read." He pulled 2 20s from his wallet and stuffed them in her jar, already crammed full of bills.
"It's for a great cause."
"That it is." She held out her open palm to him. "Let me read you."
He grinned. "I don't go in for that kind of thing. Just a little out there, if you know what I mean. Shame my wife isn't here. She loves that kind of stuff."
"Where is she this evening?"
"Home. Our youngest is sick with a cold. We were both looking forward to a night out, but when your kid gets sick, that's the way it goes."
Without the distraction of work or a palm reading, there wasn't much to say. "Sure I can't offer you a glimpse into the future?"
He laughed. "It's all hocus pocus."
"Harmless hocus pocus." He studied her a moment.
"Harmless? You sure? Old Darren on Bewitched was always getting turned into a rock or sporting donkey ears."
Laughter eased some of her tension.
"I promise I won't turn you into a black cat or give you donkey ears."
He glanced from side to side, always aware of who was watching. Nearby, a photographer from the paper snapped pictures. Levi reminded her of herself. Once you stepped outside your front door, it was game on.
"Thanks, but I'll take a pass."
She smiled. "You are always thinking, always looking to the next horizon."
"I'm ambitious."
"I see you running for state office, perhaps even national office."
He shrugged. "It's no secret the sky is the limit for me."
He wanted office, true, but he possessed a hunger for power. He wanted power over life and death. "I think you'll be a judge, maybe even a senator in the very near future."
"I like the sound of that."
Rockoff had been in the medical examiner's office when Charlotte had called. He'd felt his phone vibrate, but had been unable to check messages for several hours. As soon as he played her message, he broke away and drove over to Sooner Tate's shop. When he finally stood outside, ageless, it was past 10. The building was dark, and there didn't seem to be any signs of trouble, but calm waters often hid trouble. He got out of the car, flashlight in hand, and crossed the street to the front door. The doorknob was locked. He shone his light in the picture window, letting it skim over the front counter, glowing lava lamps, books, and all sorts of crap. He didn't see anything out of the ordinary.
"Kid, have you blown Charlotte off?"
He shook his head. Damn kid. He was half tempted to walk away when he thought about the alley that ran behind the store. 5 minutes to check and confirm the kid was well and truly gone, and then he'd call Charlotte. He got back in his car and drove around the corner and into the alley. His lights shone on the narrow alley and landed on the truck parked by a dented blue dumpster. He parked beside the truck, unclipped his sidearm, and rested his hand on the gun's handle. He walked toward the truck and shone his light into the interior. His feet crunched on something, and he glanced down to see a smashed cell phone. Shit. Inside the truck, Sooner's satchel purse lay on the seat, as did her keys. He tried the door, unlocked. He removed his gun from its holster and reached for his radio.
"Dispatch, this is Detective Daniel Rockoff. I need units at 101 Washington Street. I've got signs of a possible attack."
"We'll dispatch units, Detective Rockoff."
He called Sinclair. "I need you to get over to Sooner Tate's place on Washington. I think the killer has been here."
"How do you know?" She was at the office, but her voice sounded rough with fatigue. They'd all been putting long hours into this investigation.
"Her truck is here, and so are her purse and keys, but someone smashed her cell phone. Sooner was his perfect victim." "I know. What would Charlotte say when he told her that her child had been kidnapped?"
Sinclair must have picked up on the extra tension in his voice. "He holds his victims for several days."
"Which is why we might have a chance this time."
Patrol cars arrived in minutes, and soon the scene was filled with uniforms and a forensics team. The shop owner was summoned, and he arrived blurry-eyed and annoyed to unlock the front door. While forensics worked inside the store and around the truck, Rockoff and Sinclair walked up and down Washington Street, showing copies of Sooner's mugshot, which Sinclair had brought. Most of the stores were closed this time of night, but a couple of restaurants and a movie rental store remained open. The clerk in the movie rental store reported that he'd seen a black sport utility vehicle parked in front of Sooners.
"What made you notice it?" Rockoff said.
The kid with red hair and freckles shrugged.
"Everyone on the street has noticed Sooner. She's something to look at. We all knew she was set to open today." "And did she?" "Not until the end of the day. I saw her flip her sign from closed to open late in the day."
"Late as in when?" Sinclair said.
"I had been watching Braveheart, and it was the final battle scene. What's that, a couple of hours into the movie? Anyway, I started the flick when I arrived at 3, so about 5?
She'd been scheduled to arrive at Charlotte's party by 7.
"How was she dressed?" Rockoff said. "Smoking hot. She had on this long white dress that hugged her curves. Her hair was pinned up, and she wore a lot of makeup. Not too much, but enough to make her look super sexy."
"You saw all of that from here?" Rockoff said. The kid grinned and pulled a pair of binoculars out from behind his desk.
"I like to keep an eye on stuff."
"What can you tell me about the sport utility vehicle?" He glanced toward the store's security camera and wondered if it cast its lens toward Sooners.
"Black, tinted windows. I kind of thought she had a date with a big shot. She's the kind of gal who dates big shots, but the car pulled away and drove off."
"You see the big shot?"
"He never got out of the car."
"Maybe he pulled around back and picked her up in the alley. Maybe the big shot didn't want to be noticed." "You see anyone go into the shop?"
"I had a couple of customers, so I got a little distracted. I don't know. Hey, is Sooner okay?"
"We hope so." He glanced toward the surveillance camera. "That work?"
The kid glanced at the camera. "Not exactly." "What does that mean?" "It works, but the outlet it's plugged into is dead. The owner has an electrician coming."
"Great."
"But check with the pub on the corner. I hear he keeps his cameras on and running all the time."
"I'll do that." They moved 4 stores down and into the pub. The sound of laughter mingled with the steady beat of music. Smoke filled the air. A bouncer, a 6'8" black dude with a name tag that read RJ, greeted Rockoff and Sinclair.
"What do the cops want?"
RJ said. There'd been a time during Rockoff's undercover days when he'd never have been pegged for a cop. He'd been the master at blending and vanishing. Rockoff tucked his identification back in his pocket.
"We need to see your tapes."
With a nod, RJ indicated a reed-thin white guy talking to a waitress. The guy had dark, balding hair slicked back away from an angular face. His side vision caught sight of Rockoff and Sinclair, and he quickly excused the waitress and moved toward them.
"What can I do for you, officers?"
"Surveillance tapes," Rockoff said. The thin man shrugged and motioned them toward a side office. Once he shut the door, the blare of music eased.
"There a problem?"
"We don't know," Rockoff said. He glanced at a bank of 6 television screens behind a desk abutting a wall. "But I'd like to see the tapes from the camera you have out front."
The thin man turned. "Number 1, East on Washington? Sure." He punched a couple of buttons. "What time frame?"
"Let's start with today, around 5.
"Pretty specific."
"Can you pull it up?"
"Sure."
He tapped a couple of buttons and the image of 4:45 p.m. popped up. The camera didn't take in all of Sooner's storefront, only the far west side. The thin man played the images frame by frame. Cars passed, people passed. But without a direct angle on the front door, it was impossible to see who entered the shop. The black sport utility vehicle that the video kid had mentioned drove slowly by the shop. Rockoff leaned in. The tape caught a portion of the license, ADEJ.
"Can you copy that for me?" "Sure."
He downloaded the images, shoved a compact disc into a slot, and hit record.
"You'll have a copy in a minute. What happened?"
"You noticed the New Age shop across the street?"
"And the new psychic? Yeah, she's a looker. What's she done? Drugs? Prostitution?"
"What makes you think she's done something?"
"She's been in business less than a day, and she's got cops on my doorstep. Plus, that weird old guy has been lurking around."
"What weird old guy?"
"I don't know who he is, but I caught him watching her shop a couple of times. He never stayed long."
"Grady Tate. If I get a few pictures, could you identify him?"
"Sure."
Charlotte saw the flashing police lights in front of Sooners the instant she pulled onto Washington Street. She parked and got out of her car. It was easy to spot Rockoff. She hurried to him, her high heels clicking against the pavement. "Daniel." Rockoff turned, as did his partner.
Sinclair raised a questioning and amused brow. Daniel? Christ, can I call them or what? Rockoff moved toward Charlotte. You were right to call. There were signs of a struggle in the alley. Her stomach clenched. Did you find Sooner? Not yet, but we're doing all that we can. Feeling both helpless and angry, she shook her head. I knew something was wrong. Detective? Rockoff turned toward a forensics tech. Yes? We found a $20 bill in the desk. I dusted it and pulled 2 nice thumb and index prints from the edge. Thanks. Let me know the second you have identification. Do you think the killer gave it to her? Charlotte gripped his arm, uncaring if anyone saw her. He patted her on the hand. If he did, then we might be able to identify him and find her. Sooner awoke in stages as the fog cleared from her brain. Her eyelids felt heavy and her mouth dry. She realized she was sitting in a metal chair. Her arms were tied to the chair's arms and her feet to the legs. She tried to rock from side to side and knock the chair to the side, but discovered it was bolted to the floor. Her vision cleared to a dimly lit, plain, windowless room made of concrete. All she could see in front of her was a metal door. The room was empty to the right and to the left. She craned her neck behind her, but could only make out some sort of tub and a stack of cinder blocks. Heart now hitting her ribs, she tried to twist her hands free. All she managed to do was cut the tender flesh of her wrists as she twisted and turned. Shit! Where am I? She screamed, but the thick walls boomeranged her voice right back. She'd been in fixes, drunken townies looking for fun, or a mugger aiming to grab her cash, but nothing like this had happened to her before. The door opened and a brighter light switched on and drowned the room in light. The brightness made her wince and turn away. What do you want? She said. Your confession. Her pupils adjusted and she looked up. Whoever this creep was, he stood just behind the light so that she couldn't see his face clearly. She did make out the outline of a robe and hood. What was he, some motherfucking monk? God help her. This wasn't about sex or money. This guy was crazy. Why do I have to confess? I can't send you to God without a confession. She strained against her bindings, letting the rope dig into her skin. Pain kept her mind focused and her panic tethered. She'd been dealing with crazies since she was a kid and knew the futility of arguing. They believed what they believed. God doesn't want me with or without a confession. God wants you clean and pure, he said. His kind got off on fear and control. He had control, but she'd withhold fear as long as possible. She managed to laugh. That ship has sailed. Redemption is always possible, no matter how unclean you once were. Not in my case. God will want more from me than just a simple confession. I've lied so much, the words will be meaningless to him. Tension rippled through his body. Good. Keep him off balance. Keep him thinking. How would you know what God wants? He said. I know. Her voice didn't wobble or betray the fear tearing her gut. He crossed the room, grabbed the back of her hair, and jerked hard. How do you know what God wants, witch? Pain pulsed across her scalp. I know he wants more. You need to find more like me, or he will be angry. Her captor released her hair and stepped back. He studied her with narrowed eyes. He wants the other witch too, doesn't he? That's right, he wants us both. I'd thought to wait and save her for last, but maybe not. She didn't know who he referenced, but hoped she could buy enough time to get free and get out of here before he returned. He stepped back and moved to the door. I'll take care of you both. It seems right that you two go to God together. When he slammed the door behind him, she closed her eyes and started to weep. Forgive me. Chapter 23. Sunday, October 31st, 1 a.m. Daniel had told Charlotte to go home. He wanted her locked behind her apartment door, safe and secure. But just sitting on her hands and waiting for someone else to save Sooner wasn't an option. She did go home, but only to change quickly into jeans, a thick sweater, and sneakers. As she hurried back to her car, she thought about Sooner, lost and afraid, and calling for her. She hoped to put aside all the time and memories they'd lost. She'd hoped they'd make new memories. Now she feared that window into the future was closing quickly. She stiffened her spine. Feel sorry for yourself later, Grace. Daniel was still trying to get a warrant to search Grady's trailer. Likely it wouldn't be until midday when the judge signed it, but she didn't need a search warrant. She wasn't concerned about convictions or due process. She simply wanted to find Sooner. She slid behind the wheel, fired up the engine, and backed out. Find Sooner. Find Sooner. Finding signs to the I-395 on-ramp, she headed south and then followed the interstate and back roads to the carnival. Even this early, the road was crowding with traffic. When her phone rang, she was glancing in her rearview mirror at a black truck that was annoyingly close to her bumper. She slid into the right lane as she hit send. Charlotte Wellington. It's Angie. Her voice sounded rough with fatigue. Have the police found Sooner? I haven't heard. I'm headed to Grady's now. Are you going alone? I'll be fine. Malcolm says Grady's a suspect. I don't care what they're calling him now. I just want to find Sooner. Charlotte, does Daniel know where you are? Concern dripped from the words. No. He needs to know. I'll be fine. I've handled Grady before, and I will again. Daniel should know what you're doing. I'll tell him. The sport utility vehicle's headlights bounced off her rearview mirror, temporarily blinding her. Angie hesitated. Is there anything I can do to help? No. She softened her tone. But thank you. I'm sorry. Charlotte raised her chin. Thanks. I know this isn't the best time, but thanks for last night. You were a big hit. We raised over $200,000. The truck passed her and zoomed ahead. Well done. I couldn't have done it without you. Sure you could have. Her exit approaching, she put on her blinker and took it. Call me when you find Sooner. I will. Tears glistened as she hung up, checked her screen to make sure no one had called while she was on with Angie, and then wove through the back streets toward the carnival. As she approached the carnival entrance, she picked up her phone and called Daniel. It rang once, twice. Charlotte. His deep, even voice sounded tired, yet choked with a familiarity shared between people who were intimate. She could have argued, dismissed, or ignored the tone, but didn't. She loved him. Have you found her? Not yet. We're running those prints through the automated fingerprint identification system now. She parked her car. No one has seen her? No. Have you found Grady? He's still missing. We've had cruisers at the carnival several times, but no one can find him. The cops walked the grounds, but without a warrant, we can't search the structures. We should have that warrant in a couple of hours. She set her handbrake and turned off the ignition. Good. Call me if you find something. Charlotte, where are you? I'm at the carnival. What are you doing there? The urgency rocketed in his voice. I'm looking for Grady, and when I find him, I'll call you. Damn it, Charlotte. Go back home. Stay in your apartment today. Keep the door locked. Unpack. I'll call you when I have something. I'm not very good at staying put, Daniel. His voice dropped to a low growl. Charlotte, get in your car now and drive home. I can't do that. I have to find Grady. That's my job! He sounded as if he wanted to come through the phone and shake her. I know his little tricks and hiding places. I'll find him before you get your warrant. Exactly, and then I won't be able to use the evidence. Your warrant has nothing to do with me. Do not go looking for Grady. She got out of her car. A breeze blew, chilling her skin. If it's any consolation, I think I love you. Charlotte, he groaned. Please go home. I'll call back in a few minutes. She closed the phone and shut it off. The carnival was quiet and all but deserted. The crew would have had a late Friday night, and everyone would be sleeping for at least another hour, because tonight was the closing and the place would see big crowds. She spotted Grady's trailer and moved toward it. She tried the silver, chipped handle, but discovered it was locked. You're gonna have to do better than that, Grady. Digging in her purse, she pulled out a metal nail file. Mariah had taught her how to wedge open the lock on Grady's trailer when they were kids. A couple of times they'd pry open the lock and take beers from the fridge and cigarettes from his desk drawer. Mariah had handled the beer and smokes well. Charlotte, after half a cigarette and some beer, had grown lightheaded and nauseated. She'd thrown up several times. Good times, she quipped. She reached for the lock when she heard the crunch of footsteps behind her. Miss Wellington? She slid the file between her fingers, a defensive technique she'd learned after the attack several years ago.
Slowly, she turned and saw Lonnie White striding toward her. Behind him sat the black sport utility vehicle she'd noticed following her on the highway. He jabbed his index finger at her. "I want to talk to you." She moved away from the trailer, knowing it cut off one of her avenues of retreat. Keeping her expression neutral, she searched around him for signs of anyone else. They were alone. "It's time you and I talked." Red-rimmed eyes broadcast a hangover, sadness, and anger. "I don't have time for you." "We need to talk." "We have talked. There's nothing else to say." Her hands trembled as she walked toward her car. He moved quickly in front of her and blocked her path. "Bullshit. You bitched at me enough, but I didn't get to say my piece." "Sober up, Lonnie, and then we'll talk." The sternness behind the words belied her rising fears. She tried to sidestep him. Lonnie blocked her, curling dirty, rough fingers into a fist. "You saw to it that Samantha went free. She's a damn witch, and she doesn't deserve to live, let alone walk the streets free." "What did you call her?" "A goddamned witch. She cast a fucking spell on my brother, and she killed him. Then you used that legal bullshit and made the jury think she was innocent." She took a step back. He talked about witches and spells. He lived in Raleigh, but he'd been back in Virginia for several weeks. He could have killed those 2 women in Alexandria. "Go home, Lonnie. Get some sleep, and we will talk later." She fished in her purse for her phone. His hand shot out. He grabbed her by the collar, and he tugged hard. She stumbled forward, and her phone flew out of her hands and skidded across the hard ground. In a panic, she drove the flat of her hand into his nose, just as a self-defense instructor had explained. The nose was a sensitive spot, and if hit hard enough, could kill. The force of her strike wasn't deadly, but the sharp, painful jolt would slow him down enough so she could get to her car. He seized her throat and squeezed. "I've been wanting to do this for weeks." She clawed at his hands, screamed, and kicked at his shins. He dodged her kicks and tightened his grip. White spots appeared as she grasped for a full breath. Was her life going to end on the grounds of the carnival? Grady would have a laugh over that. Somewhere, her fogged brain registered the thunder of footsteps running toward her. "Daniel?" Hope exploded. As he got close, she realized her savior wasn't Daniel, but Levi. Where had he come from? Levi grabbed Lonnie by the back of his head and twisted hard. Lonnie screamed and, now off balance, was forced to release Charlotte's neck. She sucked in a breath and stumbled back as Lonnie fell to the ground. Levi had Lonnie on the ground and his knee in his back. "Levi?" "Yes, you're fine." Lonnie lay on the ground, struggling and squirming. "Let me up. That bitch is gonna pay." Levi ground his knee deeper into the man's spine until Lonnie winced and cried out in pain. "I will break your spine in 2 before I let you get away." Lonnie shouted several expletives, but pain forced him to go limp on the ground. "Charlotte, are you all right?" "Levi, where did you come from?" "I brought my kids back out here last night. My daughter left her coat behind. It's her favorite. Shit, what are the chances I'd be here?" "I'm just glad you were." Her fingers traced long scratches made by Lonnie's fingernails as he gripped her neck. As adrenaline faded, the wounds grew painful. "You better get those looked at," Levi said. "Yeah, you're right." Lonnie growled. "Let me go! You ain't a cop and you can't hold me!" Levi ground his knee again into Lonnie's spine. "And yet I am." "I'm gonna sue." Levi laughed. "I know a good defense attorney who just might help me out with the case." Charlotte nodded. "My services will be free of charge." Levi winked at her. "Appreciate it." Charlotte spotted her phone on the ground and reached for it. "I'll call the cops." "Open your trunk." "Why?" "I need to stow this bird somewhere." "You can't put me in a car trunk!" Lonnie screamed. Levi twisted the guy's thumb until he screamed. "Get in the trunk or I will break your hand." Lonnie screamed when Levi manipulated his thumb backward. He scrambled to his feet and moved toward Charlotte's BMW as she hurried ahead and fumbled for her keys. With a shaking hand, she opened the trunk. The rising trunk blocked her view of Lonnie and Levi for a moment, and she used the interlude to run a shaking hand through her hair and gather her wits. Thankfully, Daniel had not been the one to rescue her. He'd have been upset, and she sensed he wouldn't have been afraid to lecture. At least Levi didn't have an emotional stake in her life, so he would be cool. As she tried to calm herself, she heard a grunt and the whoosh of air. She moved around the open trunk door and saw Levi moving toward her. Blood covered his hands. She glanced at him and then at Lonnie, who now lay on the ground in a thickening pool of his own blood. "Levi?" He jumped forward, and before she could process the situation, he drove a needle into her arm and jammed his thumb down on the plunger. She stared at him, struggling to mesh realities. "Levi?" He held her as she relaxed involuntarily into his arms. "I've been waiting for you for 18 years, Grace." "What?" Instead of answering, he scooped her up in his arms and laid her in the trunk of her own car. She stared up at his smiling face as he slammed the lid closed. Rockoff got the call 15 minutes after he'd hung up with Charlotte. Annoyed, tired, and frustrated as he sped toward the carnival, he'd snapped into the phone, "Rockoff." "This is Garrison." He shoved out a breath. "Yeah?" "A patrol returned to the carnival. They found a body." His thoughts jumped to Charlotte. "Who?" "Lonnie White. His throat was cut." "Was there any sign of Charlotte?" "No. Why would there be?" "She called me just minutes ago and told me she was looking for Grady. She thought he could help us find Sooner." Garrison hesitated, clearly detecting the concern and familiarity. "According to patrol, they spotted a black BMW driving away from the scene." "Charlotte drives a BMW?" "A man was behind the wheel." He took the carnival exit. "I'm almost at the carnival." "Good, because patrol opened Grady's trailer searching for the killer, and they found some disturbing images, news articles on several murdered women, and Levi Kane." "Levi Kane?" Garrison shoved out a breath. "Yeah, the prosecutor, who's not answering his cell, home, or office phones. In fact, I am standing in his office and have spoken to the night security guards. He's not logged in the building for 2 days." "What about his home address?" "Keir and I can be there in 15 minutes. "I'll search Grady's trailer." "I'll call you as soon as I know something." Rockoff hung up his phone and pulled into the carnival parking lot, now filled with a half-dozen cop cars with flashing lights. He showed his identification and rushed toward the yellow crime scene tape. A white, bloodied sheet covered Lonnie's body. He moved past the scene to Grady's trailer, where a uniformed officer stood guard. He showed his badge and identified himself before gaining admittance. The trailer wasn't large. There was a front section with a bed covered with rumpled blankets, a small galley kitchen along the wall, a bathroom with dozens of prescription bottles on the sink, and in the back a larger space with a table and several bench chairs around it. Spread on the table were dozens of articles featuring murders over the last 18 years. He recognized the 2 murders that had been picked up by Violent Crimes database, but there were others that hadn't been gathered by the system. Not surprising, considering they were all in small towns. Why had Grady saved the articles? Was he the killer, or working with the killer? Shit. Mariah was the first to die, and now he was back, and 2 other women had died. Garrison and Keir arrived at Kane's home just after 4 in the morning. The Kane home was a neat suburban white clapboard house on a small green lawn. Leaves peppered the neat front yard. There were pumpkins on the front steps, mock spiderwebs strewn across the bushes, and a ghost made out of an old sheet dangling from an oak. Garrison checked his watch and then moved to the front door and rang the bell. Several seconds passed, and there was no sign of movement. He rang the bell again. Finally, a light flickered on and he heard footsteps. The footsteps paused at the front door, and he stood in front of the peephole with his badge held high. "Alexandria Police," he said. The door opened to a small, fragile woman. A thick, well-worn robe swallowed her slim body, and dark hair framed a pale face. She had a metal baseball bat in her hands. "Can I help you?" "I'm Detective Garrison with the Alexandria Police. This is my partner, Detective Keir. Is Mr. Kane at home?" She frowned and lowered the bat. "Levi moved out over 3 months ago. I can give you the address of his apartment." Keir glanced at Garrison. His shock mirrored his own face. "I saw him at a fundraiser last night. He said you weren't there because one of the kids was sick. He gave us the impression that you were happily married." She glanced behind her, as if fearing the noise would have awoken the children. "I've told him to stop doing that. I've told him our marriage can't be fixed, but he won't leave me alone." "What has he done?" Someone broke into my house the other night. They stole jewelry, set the box on the floor, and urinated on it. I knew he could be foul, but he has no limits."
Garrison flexed his fingers. "Did you call the police?"
"No, Levi has too many connections. Why are you asking about Levi?"
"Levi is a person of interest in a missing persons case."
"What? Who?"
"Charlotte Wellington. She's a defense attorney."
"I know who she is."
"How?" Garrison said. She set the bat down.
"Levi used to speak about her often."
"What did he say?"
"He didn't like her. He thought she manipulated the law." She twisted the ties of her robe in her hands. "He called her a witch."
"Witch?" Garrison said. "Are you sure about that?"
"Yes, I'm sure."
Thin lips flattened.
"Levi never dealt well with strong women. I'm hardly what anyone would consider aggressive, and we even had our issues."
"Can you tell us what they were?" Keir said. "I wouldn't ask, but this is important."
"It doesn't matter. All that matters is that I convinced him to leave."
"How?" Keir demanded.
"I found some things in the basement. Terrible things. I found an attorney and gave what I discovered to him. I told Levi if he didn't leave, I'd go to the media."
"What did you find?"
"Photos of women."
"Who?"
"I don't know who they were. They appeared to be asleep."
"Asleep or dead?" Keir said.
Her shoulders stiffened. "I don't know for sure, but it was enough to make Levi leave."
"You said he came back?"
Her lips flattened. "Yes."
"Who has the pictures now?"
"Like I said, my attorney." Her gaze narrowed. "Where is Levi?"
"Why didn't you come to the police?" Garrison said.
"Because they were just pictures, and there is no proof that Levi took them. And like I said, he has connections."
"Do you have any idea where he might be if not at his apartment?" Garrison said.
"I don't know."
"I think you do," Keir said.
She pursed her lips. "I should get my attorney."
Garrison leaned forward, using the full measure of his height to intimidate her. "You should get an attorney, because I am going to prove that you knew those women weren't sleeping but dead."
"I didn't know."
"You've lived with the guy for how long? A decade? You are clearly afraid of him, so you know what he can do."
She shoved a trembling hand through her hair. "Our marriage is in trouble. That doesn't mean anything."
"And yet you had to blackmail him into leaving." Garrison shook his head. "I'm going to arrest you if you don't tell me what you know about Levi."
"I'm trying to protect my children."
"You won't be able to protect them from jail," Garrison said. Tears welled in her eyes, but he had no pity for her. She held evidence that could have prevented the murders of 2 women. "Where are the photos?"
"Max Green. He's in Fairfax."
She rattled off the address. Garrison wrote it down. "Does Levi have a place where he goes?"
"His father had a house. Levi inherited it a couple of years ago when his father died."
"Where?"
"In Manassas. It's a small house in an old neighborhood. I asked him several times to sell it, but he refused."
"What else can you tell me about your husband?" When she hesitated, he said, "We think he has Charlotte as well as a young woman named Sooner." She wrung her hands together, then gathered the folds of her robe tighter.
"He's disturbed. I always thought he was quirky early in our marriage, and it didn't bother me. Since his dad died, it's gotten worse."
"What about his mother?"
"I never knew her. She died when he was young, but there was no love lost between his father and his mother. Mr. Kane hated his late wife."
"What else can you tell me about Kane?"
"He reads a great deal about the occult, witches. In fact, if he saw the Halloween decorations here, he'd have a fit. This is the first year the kids have celebrated Halloween."
Garrison's pulse pounded in his head. As he and Keir raced to the car, he dialed dispatch and asked for squad cars to come to the Kane house. He then spoke to Rockoff and told him what was happening. "Keir and I are headed to Manassas. I'll call Fairfax police and alert them." "Tell them not to go in hot," Rockoff said. "I don't know what this guy is going to do if he hears sirens." "Got it." He checked his watch as he started the engine and pulled into traffic. "I can be there in 20 minutes. "All right." Shit, 20 minutes. Almost no time, and also a lifetime. Chapter 24. Sunday, October 31st, 7 a.m.
"Charlotte, wake up!"
Charlotte groaned as the annoying voice got louder and louder. She wanted to swat the voice like a pesky fly, but no matter how much she tried to get away from the noises, they just kept getting louder. All she wanted to do was sleep, but the voice pleaded, cajoled, and demanded that she open her eyes. Slowly, she pried open her lids. The room was dimly lit, and at first glance appeared to be quite barren. "Who's there?" "Oh, thank God! You've got to open your eyes!" Charlotte blinked, and her mind cleared a few more degrees. "Sooner?" "Yes, it's Sooner!" "Where are you?" "We're in some kind of creepazoid's basement, and he's gonna kill us!" Her eyes opened wide and full now. Her brain still lingered under a haze, but it was improving. "Levi." "I don't know what his name is. I've never seen him before." "Tall? Blonde?" "He wears a hood, like one of those wizards on television." "Where is he?" "He's preparing." "For what?" "Shit if I know." Sooner's voice cracked with fear. "But I can promise it isn't good." Charlotte tried to sit up and realized her hands and feet were secured to bolts on the floor. "He keeps calling me Mariah." "How would he know about Mariah?" She sniffed, trying to hold off tears. "He said it's hard to kill witches." "He killed Mariah." Her brain scrambled to get back to the past as her hands twisted to get free of the bindings. "I never saw him before." 18 years changes people." "Yeah. Sooner, where are you?" "I'm in a chair. I'm tied." Charlotte paused. "I hear running water." "There's a big-ass tub in the corner. I don't know what he uses it for." "It's where he drowns his witches." When Levi descended the stairs to the underground chamber, he wore only his robe and nothing underneath it. His body hummed with excitement. He'd never before been in the presence of such overwhelming power. 2 witches. One was reborn from the dead, and the other destined to have been his first kill. He opened the door and flipped on the lights. Both women tensed, and both stared at him. He met the young one's gaze head-on. "You should have stayed dead." The girl stared at him, but it was the other one that spoke. "You killed Mariah?" He faced her. "I did, but as you can see, she came back. I never realized that she was so powerful." "Mariah was a young girl, barely 17. This girl is Sooner, not Mariah." "Don't be fooled, Charlotte," Levi said. "She is the reincarnation." He studied Charlotte. "It makes sense now. You used your power to bring her back. I always knew you were strong, but I didn't know just how much." "She was my mother, you sick son of a bitch!" Sooner yelled. Levi turned and looked at Sooner. "She wasn't your mother. You are one and the same." Tears welled in Charlotte's eyes. This was not the way for Sooner to find out the truth, but if they were to die, Sooner deserved the truth now. "Levi, she was born before Mariah died." Levi moved towards Sooner and from his pocket pulled a knife. He grabbed a handful of her hair and yanked her head back, exposing her neck. He pressed the tip of the knife to her neck. "I should just kill her now and be done with her." Charlotte jerked at her bindings. "Don't hurt her! She's a child!" "She's no child." "She's my child!" Charlotte screamed. Sooner's frantic gaze darted from Levi to Charlotte. "What?" "Grady lied to you," Charlotte said to Sooner. The weight of 18 years pressed hard on her chest. "I'm your mother, not Mariah." "What?" "I gave birth to you, not Mariah. Grady lied." Tears ran down Sooner's face. "Liar!" The words scraped over her brain. She had lied. She could have told Sooner the truth immediately, but she hadn't. Levi pressed the knife against Sooner's throat. "You are a coward, Levi." Charlotte injected venom into her voice. "A spineless coward." He pressed the knife into Sooner's flesh. "Watch what you say." Charlotte yanked hard at the ropes around her wrists. "Why, you are a fool, a fucking coward. If you had any balls, you'd be coming after me, not her." He lowered the knife from Sooner's neck. "What? You go after a child when you could take me? Spineless, pitiful." She spat at him. His eyes narrowed. "Bitch." "Good. Good. Get mad at me. Leave her alone. You go after helpless women who are alone and vulnerable because you know you can't handle a ballbuster like me. She coded the words with all the anger that had been building since Grady had contacted her 10 days ago. He crossed the room and grabbed her by the throat. Murder burned in his gaze. He wanted to choke the life from her lungs. "Take me and leave her," she gasped. "Not yet, Charlotte." He released her and she coughed. "Why, Levi?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "What are you waiting for?" "It's about justice, about ridding the world of evil, something you would not understand." "Why wouldn't I understand?" "Because you are dedicated to releasing evil on the world." "What evidence do you have?" "You're the one that read me all those years ago. When you held my hand, I knew you were destined to be my first. You were the one that would enable me to cross from the light to the dark." "But you killed Mariah." "I didn't know there were two of you. The wig and the mask. I was confused. All these years I thought I'd killed you, and then I saw you at the carnival, and you said you'd worked there. I realized my mistake, and now I am correcting it." "How do you know I'm evil? What if you're wrong again?" She hoped his brain would connect with some shred of logic. "You're a lawyer. You know we are all entitled to a defense." "There is no defense for true evil." He backed away, fearing he'd lash out and kill her. "Did you really think Samantha was innocent?" She hesitated. "Yes." "She is not innocent." "How can you say that?" "I know. Just as I know you are guilty." Rockoff and Sinclair arrived at the little home in Manassas, Virginia. It was a one-story white brick home with a neat front yard. The mailbox by the front door was not overflowing with mail, and only today's paper sat on the front step. Levi had been here recently. The house's large front window was curtained off with heavy drapes. All the shades on the other windows were drawn. There were no signs of life in the house. "It looks deserted," Sinclair said. Frustration ate Rockoff. "Yeah, let's have a look around back." Guns drawn, they moved around the side of the house through the gate of a chain-link fence. He lifted the latch and carefully opened the gate. It squeaked and groaned. He stepped around a green hose, neatly rolled into a circle, and moved toward a set of 3 stairs that led to a back door. The drapes on the door's windows were also drawn. "There's no way to look inside," Rockoff said. "Garrison is working on the warrant. It should be here any minute." Time had never carried such weight for Rockoff. Minutes, even hours, didn't matter in the big scheme, but today both could span the rest of Charlotte's and Sooner's lifetime. "Daniel." She'd spoken his name with such urgency. For the first time, he'd seen her vulnerable. God, but he did not want to lose her. He reached for the door handle. "The warrant will be here soon." "I hear something inside. Someone sounds like they're in trouble." Sinclair cocked her head and listened to the silence. "I think you're right. They sound pretty scared." Rockoff hesitated one more instant, as if to give her the chance to change her mind. They were investigating a prosecutor's home, and they better damn well be sure they understood the consequences. Rockoff understood he would risk all for Charlotte. Sinclair raised a questioning brow. "What are you waiting for?" He tried the door and discovered it was locked. Stepping back, he shoved his shoulder into the door. It bowed and groaned, but didn't give. His shoulder stinging, he hit the door a second time, and this time wood splintered and gave way. The door swung open to a neat kitchen outfitted with avocado green linoleum floors, a green countertop, and white appliances. Rockoff flipped on the lights. He studied the room, which looked as if it hadn't been used in a long time. As he crossed the room to the door that led to the front of the house, he heard the flip of a deadbolt and the slam of the front door. Rockoff raced toward the front of the house while Sinclair ran out the back. Blood now racing, he yanked open the front door as a hooded figure dashed toward a truck across the street. Rockoff chased the suspect, his long legs quickly eating up the space. He grabbed the guy by the hood and yanked back just as Sinclair came up, gun drawn. The man teetered off balance and fell to the ground. Rockoff grabbed his cuffs from his belt, handcuffed him, and rolled him over. Grady glared back up at them, his breathing sharp and quick. "Get the hell off me!" Rockoff hauled him to his feet. "What are you doing here?" "I don't have to tell you shit," the old man spat. Rockoff pushed him against the side of the truck. "Old man, I don't have time for you. I'm trying to find Sooner and Charlotte, and if you know something, tell me." Thick brows nodded. "Charlotte and Sooner are missing?" "Sooner 12 hours ago, Charlotte just this morning." "That son of a bitch Levi took them," Grady ground out. "How do you know about Levi?" Rockoff said. "Because he's the bastard that killed Mariah." "How do you know?" "When I saw his wife at the carnival, she was wearing an angel necklace. I recognized it. It's the one I gave Mariah." "There are a million angel necklaces in the world." "Not like this one. I had it made for her. I know it was hers." "That doesn't mean he killed her." "The bastard that drowned her in that lake took the necklace. It wasn't on her when I found her." "You're the one that moved her body?" "I couldn't bear to leave her like that. It just wasn't right." Old eyes filled with tears before he coughed and wrestled his emotions back in check. "When I saw the necklace, I started digging. That's what I've been doing the last couple of days." "What did you find out?" "That he was in this area going to school 18 years ago." "Then?" "Other women have died like Mariah. Raleigh, Asheville, Greenville. I gotta look at Levi's credit card statements. Levi traveled to all those cities around the times of the murders." Rockoff would find out later what Grady had done to dig up the information on Levi. "Do you know where he is?" "He's not in that house. I searched every inch of it." "Then where?" "There's another house, in Alexandria." "Who told you this?" A bitter smile tipped the edge of his lips. "I don't worry about legal channels. I know how to get around and ask questions." "Where's the house?" "First, you're gonna have to promise me something." Levi reached behind Charlotte's head and tested the strength of the ropes. "Since you're so anxious to die, let's get started." Charlotte stared at Sooner's tear-streaked face. She was doing her best to be brave, but Charlotte only saw a young, frightened girl. "So you want me to confess?" "The faster you do, the faster this will all be over." And the longer she held out, the more time they might have for help to arrive. "Don't, Charlotte! I don't care if he kills me," Sooner said. "I do, honey. I do." She jerked at her chains. "I have nothing to confess to you, you son of a bitch." "I was hoping it wouldn't be too easy." Levi moved behind her, where he retrieved a large flat board, which he laid over her body. The weight pressed down on her chest, and though she could still breathe, the increased pressure made the effort more conscious. Smiling, he moved to the pile of cinder block and hefted the first. He laid it on the center of the board. "Are you ready to confess?" "No? I didn't think you'd give up so early. The tough ones are the hardest and most satisfying to break." He placed another cinder block on the board. "How long could she last? A half hour? An hour?" Fresh tears welled in her eyes. They were not for her own life, but for Sooner and for the fact that she wouldn't see Rockoff again. For a moment, she nearly let despair wash over her. Surrender beckoned. She closed her eyes, and in that instant heard Mariah scream, "Coward! Baby! Quitter!" "I'm not a quitter," Charlotte whispered more to herself. Levi leaned closer, studying her. "What did you say?" She met his gaze. "I said I am not a quitter." "We'll see about that." He laid another block on the center of the board. She struggled to breathe, but still managed to grin. "So what is your story, Levi? When did you become the protector of the faith?" He hesitated, the fourth cinder block in his hand. "It's a duty I was born to do. I've known it since I was very young." "So you always knew?" "I had glimpses of my destiny, but I didn't see the clear vision until 18 years ago when you read my palm and told me to follow my heart." "What is it with you nut jobs and destiny?" Sooner said. Her fists clenched. She glared at him. "I mean, who told you that your destiny is such hot shit?" He glared at Sooner. "Shut up." "It's a valid question," Charlotte said. The longer he talked, the longer he delayed, and the better their chances. "Most of the crazies either think they're destined for greatness or they hate their mothers." "I'll bet he hated Mommy Dearest," Sooner said. Levi swung around and leveled his gaze on her as he clutched the block. Shut up. Charlotte felt no humor, but forced a laugh from her laden lungs. Hit a nerve. He stared at Sooner, and then, as if wrestling a demon from his own shoulders, he turned and placed the block on Charlotte's chest. Keep talking. Soon enough, the weight is going to crack your ribs, and you will barely have the weight to confess. Breathing now was deliberate and a struggle. Soon her body wouldn't be able to tolerate the weight, and when she died, he'd go after Sooner. A tear trickled down her cheek, and Levi leaned forward and gently swiped it away with his index finger. "How many women have you killed, Levi?" Charlotte whispered. "Not women, witches." He retrieved another block. "After tonight, 12. Charlotte struggled to breathe. "Levi, I've met your wife. This would break her heart." "My wife has no heart." And then it made sense. Levi's wife's tense manner at the carnival, the slight fear in his children's eyes. "She left you." "Not for long. Soon she will burn. I plan to take a page from Samantha White's book. Nail the windows shut and set the house on fire. I offered the 5-year plea agreement because I knew I could wait to kill my family. I plan to make it look like she did it to get revenge on me, and when she's arrested again, there won't be anyone to save her." Levi laid another cinder block on Charlotte's chest. 5 blocks now weighed down her lungs. Her ribs had bowed to the point of cracking and breaking. Sweat dampened her brow as she labored to pull in breath after breath. He laid another and then another on her chest. Her breaths were short and shallow, and her chest burned with pain. Death, she imagined, stood in the shadows, and she sensed he wanted her, but couldn't take hold of her soul because Mariah stood in his path. "Mariah," she whispered. Levi leaned toward her. "Who did you say?" In that moment, the basement door exploded open. Levi reacted instantly, snatching a gun from his workbench. Charlotte, dazed, watched in horror as Levi turned, raised the weapon, and pointed it at Rockoff. However, Levi shifted his aim and fired at Sinclair. The bullet hit her squarely in the chest, and she dropped to the ground. Rockoff's face darkened, and instantly he fired and hit Levi in the chest. Levi stumbled back, raised his gun a second time. Rockoff fired again, twice. The bullets sliced into Levi's chest, knocking him dead to the ground. Rockoff glanced at Charlotte. She could barely keep her eyes open and wondered how much longer she could shove air into her lungs. "Sinclair," he shouted, "you better be alive." Sinclair groaned. "I'm okay. Hit me in the vest." A rush of relief so pure washed over his features as he raced to the pit and started pulling the blocks off Charlotte. When he lifted the board, she pulled in painful but deep breaths. He glanced at the chains and then returned to Levi. He dug through his pockets and found a key. He unfastened her manacles and pulled her free. Sinclair stumbled to her feet and untied Sooner. "Fucker broke my ribs!" Charlotte leaned heavily on Rockoff. "How did you find us?" "Grady. He saw the necklace Levi gave his wife. It had belonged to Mariah." "Where is he?" She hated the old man for what he'd done to her sister, and was grateful he'd saved her and Sooner. "Outside." "Thank you, Daniel." He hugged her close, and she could feel the raw energy tightening his muscles. "Anytime." The rising sun greeted Charlotte and Sooner as the two stumbled outside, arm in arm. Squad car lights flashed, and emergency medical technicians rushed to help them. Charlotte clung to Sooner, refusing treatment until she knew the girl was okay. Only then were the emergency medical technicians able to coax her back on a gurney and give her oxygen. The next minutes were an odd haze of frenetic activity. Daniel, with Grady, his hands cuffed behind his back, approached Charlotte. "He wants to speak to you." She smiled at Daniel. "It's okay." Daniel took one step back, but remained close enough to act on an instant's notice. "I'm right here." Grady shifted his stance. "Sooner is good, tough as nails, like her mother." A part of her would always hate Grady for what he'd done, but another part recognized he'd also saved her daughter's life. "Is she speaking to you?" "Only in 4-letter words." She pulled the oxygen mask from her face. "She's got a lot to process." "Yeah, I know." He cleared his throat.
I've been looking for Mariah's killer for 18 years. I knew whoever was doing the killing was shadowing the carnival, but I never could figure it out." He inhaled. "I'm dying and knew this was my last season, so I used Sooner and the press articles to flush him out. I was sure he'd see an article eventually."
"You nearly got her killed."
"If I hadn't flushed him out, he'd have come after her when I was dead and couldn't protect her."
"Why did you lie to her about Mariah?"
"'Cause I was pissed you'd left. Once the lie was out, it just took on its own life. And it was easy enough for folks to believe, 'cause Sooner looks so much like Mariah."
"None of the old carnies said a word to her?"
"They knew I'd kill them if they did."
She closed her eyes. Her chest still ached, and pulling in a deep breath hurt.
"Are you all right?"
Daniel said. She opened her eyes. "Yes, I'm fine."
"I ain't asking forgiveness," Grady said. "But I'd appreciate it if you could help Sooner get past hating me after I'm dead. No matter what anyone says about anything, I loved that kid like my own."
Charlotte nodded, unable to forgive and unable to hate. Epilogue. 4 months later. Charlotte stared at Daniel across the crowded living room of the Rockoffs, who'd gathered for Mr. and Mrs. Rockoff's 35th wedding anniversary. All of Daniel's brothers and sisters were present, along with assorted cousins, aunts, and uncles. Charlotte still felt out of place at Rockoff family functions. Though the family had always made a point to make her and Sooner feel welcome, she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't deserving of a real family. She'd never voiced her worries to Daniel, but of course he knew. He always seemed to know when she was worried either about a family gathering, a case, or Sooner. Sooner. Most of her worries these days were reserved for Sooner. Sooner was doing well and, with Charlotte's encouragement, had closed her shop and enrolled in the community college. She lived with Charlotte in her spare room. Not having a great deal of formal education, the girl had had to backtrack with many of her courses, but she was proving to be a good student and a hard worker. The adoption experts had told Charlotte that she and Sooner were still in the honeymoon phase of their relationship. Reunions between children and birth parents often started well, but could sour. Charlotte prayed every day that never happened. That didn't mean to say that they didn't have their disagreements. Sooner's bull-headed temperament mirrored Charlotte's, and both were quick to argue, but so far they were seeing their way past it all. The new apartment had not been the adjustment that she'd expected, maybe because she spent spare nights at Daniel's place. She'd been determined to take their relationship slowly, but somehow he gently coaxed her closer and closer each time they were together. She'd always prided herself on independence, and now she couldn't imagine living without him. Nor could she imagine not having Sooner puttering around the apartment, leaving her piles of clothes on the floor, her endless shampoo products in the bathroom, or her dirty dishes in the kitchen sink. Daniel and Sooner had become friends. He was an easy man to like, but Charlotte believed Sooner would never forget the night he charged into the basement and saved them. That terrifying moment had bonded them all in a way that could never be forgotten. From across the room, Daniel raised his glass to Charlotte and winked. She smiled, warmed that soon they'd be alone in his bed.
"My Daniel is a good boy."
Grandmother Rockoff's voice crackled behind Charlotte and had her turning. "Yes, he is."
"He worries about you."
She raised her wineglass to her lips and pretended to sip. "He doesn't need to. I can take care of myself." The old woman glared at Charlotte as if she were prying away layers.
"Do you still have the dream?"
She frowned. "Daniel told you about the dreams?"
"No, Daniel would never speak of things so private. Do you still hear the woman's screams?"
Charlotte studied the old woman. "How did you know?"
"Some things I just know." She smiled. "Do you hear them?"
"No," and it was a relief to say it. "I've not heard her since that night." The night Levi had tried to crush Charlotte to death. Sooner had suffered no lasting physical injuries. However, Charlotte had suffered 3 cracked ribs and bruising all across her torso. All would be fixed by time. Mentally, she recognized a new fear of confined spaces. Elevators and crowded rooms were the worst reminders of Levi laying the cinder blocks on her chest. So she'd become adept at taking the stairs and remaining close to the door. Her quirks were improving,
but they still bothered her enough that she did not enter the family fray for the toast Daniel gave to his parents.
"You stay on the fringe. You do not go into the room,"
Grandmother said. "I don't enjoy tight spaces right now." The old woman nodded.
"It will pass. Time will make it better."
"I hope you are right." She felt a bit like a cripple at times, and it made her angry. Levi had taken something from her, and she wanted it back.
"I am right."
She stared at the old woman's lined face. It was easy to look past the wrinkles and gray hair and see the vibrancy in her eyes. Despite nearing 90, she remained mentally sharp.
"Where is your friend Angie and her family?"
An unexpected appointment came up. Angie had called early this morning. She'd been talking so quickly and so excitedly that Charlotte had thought something was wrong with David. Finally, Angie had calmed and explained that David's pediatrician had another patient, a 16-year-old girl, who was pregnant and about to deliver, which she and Malcolm consider adopting. Angie didn't want anyone to know of the offer for fear it would fall through, but she and Malcolm were beyond excited about the idea of being parents again. Charlotte had been waiting for the text, which would tell her if the baby was a boy or a girl.
"I've always liked the name Vivian for a girl,"
Grandmother said. She raised a glass of red wine to her lips and sipped. Charlotte hadn't even told Daniel of this latest development. First the dreams, and now the baby? What was it with this woman? "Excuse me?"
"For the baby girl, I like the name Vivian."
"What baby?" Grandmother smiled and patted Charlotte on the shoulder.
"The one Angie and Malcolm now await. It's a girl." She winked. "But I won't tell, just as they requested."
"Who told you?"
"No one."
"Someone had to have told you." She smiled.
"I see your Daniel headed this way."
And before Charlotte could ask Grandmother another question, Daniel arrived, and she slipped away. He was dressed in a dark suit that fit the lines of his broad shoulders and trim waist so well. Faint lines around his dark eyes creased when he smiled down at her. He kissed her on the lips.
"You look surprised."
"Your grandmother says the oddest things. Not bad things, just odd." Laughter danced in his eyes.
"She's been known to do that."
"I mean, she's kind of eerie about what she knows."
"How so?"
"Does she sort of know when things are going to happen?"
He shrugged. "If she does, she rarely says."
She let the questions fade and hooked her arm in his, rose on tiptoes, and kissed him on the lips. He smelled of soap and the faint hint of aftershave. As fearful as she could be of tight spaces, his touch, having him close, had not bothered her once. Levi's wife and children had moved out of the home they'd shared when the police had determined that he had, in fact, been plotting to kill his family and blame it on Samantha. Upstairs windows had been nailed shut and incendiary devices had been planted. Most believed he planned to return to finalize his trap after he killed Charlotte and Sooner. Grady, satisfied that Levi was dead, had released his hold on Sooner and Charlotte and had left town with the carnival. There were charges pending against the old man, but it was likely he'd never see trial. He had stage 4 lung cancer and wasn't expected to make it to summer. Even despite his illness, Sooner could not bring herself to talk to him. All these years he'd lied about her mother's identity and Mariah's death. Charlotte, too, resented the old man. If he'd given Sooner up for adoption, or if he'd simply told the girl about Charlotte, it all could have been so different. If. However, she was careful to keep her thoughts private. Grady was the only family Sooner had known, and if one day she needed to forgive him, Charlotte wanted to keep the door open. After all, Grady had tracked down Levi. If not for him, Daniel would never have found them in time. And, thanks to Grady, the police had 10 murders across the country that could now be marked solved. Levi could be placed in all the cities where the other women were murdered. The DNA that had been collected in Raleigh matched Levi's. What Grady had never understood was Levi's obsession with his carnival. The answer had been painfully simple. Levi's mother had been one of Grady's psychics, the one, in fact, still pictured on his brochure. Apparently, Grady and Levi's mother, Greta, had had an affair years ago. When Greta had realized she was pregnant, she'd left the carnival and married Levi's father. When the boy's paternity had been finally discovered, Levi's father had killed his mother.
From then on, the father set out to poison the son that was not of his blood. Charlotte knew that Mariah was now at peace. In an odd, strange way, the pieces of her life had fallen into place.
What are you worrying about now?
Daniel traced his finger down the frown line in the center of her forehead. She looked at him and smiled. With you, I have no worries. This concludes Before She Dies. Please visit our website, www.tantor.com, for more information on our growing library of unabridged audiobooks and to take advantage of special offers, or call toll-free 877-7-TANTOR to request a catalog.